Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to ancient Rome. But not the postcard version, the real thing. Dirty, loud, chaotic, and just a little bit terrifying. Picture this. You're waking up in a city packed with over 1 million people, most of them poor, most of them armed with nothing but grit and a questionable breakfast. The streets are already roaring outside, the walls around you are creaking, and the air smells like someone tried to cook fish in a sewer. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up cramped on a straw-stuffed mat, pressed up against the rough wooden wall of a Roman insula, an apartment building in name only. It's 5 stories tall, built mostly from wood, clay bricks, and desperation. You're on the 3rd floor, which, congratulations, means you're only at moderate risk of being crushed if it collapses. The top floors are cheaper, more dangerous, and definitely wobblier. The mattress is crawling. You're not sure with what, but it's moving. The air is thick. There's no glass on the windows, just shutters. And the scent wafting in from outside is a warm stew of smoke, sweat, manure, and fermented fish. Someone's already yelling in the alley, something about stolen laundry and a goat. You don't understand all the words, but the tone is universal. There's no bathroom, there's no running water, there's no kitchen. What there is, however, is noise, constant, echoing through the narrow halls and floors. Babies crying, arguments, chamber pots sloshing, someone on your floor coughing like their lungs are trying to escape. That's a daily sound, by the way. You'll get used to it. This building houses dozens of families, single men, widows, slaves. It's a mosaic of humanity, all stacked on top of each other, all trying to survive. You tiptoe around sleeping bodies as you shuffle toward the door. There's a jug of stale water in the corner. You take a sip and try not to think about where it came from. Your neighbor, Marcus, a cobbler with halitosis strong enough to peel paint, nods to you as he picks lice out of his tunic. "Morning," he grunts before heading out to open his stall down by the forum. He's already sweating, and it's barely dawn. Your room, if you can call it that, is the size of a modern closet. No privacy, no insulation, just thin walls that do a terrible job of hiding anything, especially the arguing couple next door. They seem to believe in resolving disputes by volume and plate throwing. Very Roman of them. You glance up, the ceiling has a crack in it. It's grown since yesterday. Maybe today's the day it caves in, maybe not. Historians still argue whether landlords in Rome were obligated to fix anything, or if the law was more of a polite suggestion. One thing's for sure, the fire brigade probably won't get here in time if something goes wrong. Speaking of fire, do try not to knock over the oil lamp. You step outside onto the landing, where the staircase is more ladder than stairs. It's steep, slick with grime, and completely unlit. Someone spilled what looks like leftover lentil stew on it, and you nearly slip. Again, your only choices for descending are cautious shuffling or full speed tumbling. You choose shuffling. Wise. As you reach the street level, the morning rush is already in full swing. You dodge a fruit vendor setting up her stall, a boy chasing a dog, and a man relieving himself against the side of your building. Welcome to the Subura, one of Rome's most densely populated districts. The kind of place where you can buy a loaf of bread, lose a toe, and witness a street sermon all within 5 minutes. It's a neighborhood alive with color and tension. Graffiti covers the walls, some of it political, some obscene, some poetic. It's Rome's version of social media, written in charcoal and scratched into plaster. One crude drawing depicts a man with donkey ears. Another claims, "Lucius owes me 7 denarii and he stinks." You wander past, barefoot or in sandals if you're lucky, stepping carefully to avoid broken tiles, puddles of who knows what, and occasional bones tossed from upstairs windows. That's how trash is handled here, flung into the alley and forgotten. Sanitation isn't exactly a priority. As you turn a corner, a small boy runs up and offers you a boiled egg wrapped in cloth. He wants a coin. You pat your tunic. Nothing. He shrugs and disappears into the crowd. Children here grow up fast. Childhood is a luxury for the rich. For the poor, it's training for survival. A group of prostitutes leans against a wall, laughing loudly. One calls out to you. Compliment or insult, you're not sure. Brothels are legal here. In fact, there's 2 doors down from your tenement. The curtain is already drawn back, revealing a cramped interior and a bored-looking woman chewing a fig. She waves lazily. You nod politely and move on. Everything in Rome is loud, layered, and lived in. There's always something happening, and it's rarely quiet. A man in a toga is shouting about olive oil prices. Another is hawking charms to ward off fever. A street performer bangs on a drum made from stretched animal hide while juggling wooden balls. He's got talent, but he still smells like spoiled vinegar. Suddenly, a cart creaks past you, pulled by 2 oxen and driven by a man who looks like he hasn't slept in a week. The wheels narrowly miss your foot. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't even notice. That's normal. Pedestrian rights aren't a thing. You want to survive? Stay alert. Stay agile. The city's chaos isn't just human. It's structural. The buildings around you loom precariously, many leaning at awkward angles. Fires are frequent. Collapses more so. Rome burned famously in 64 CE, but smaller blazes happen all the time. That's why most tenements forbid cooking inside. Not that it stops anyone. Still, despite the risk and the filth, the city pulses with energy. You can't help but be swept up in it. The clang of blacksmiths, the clamor of marketplaces, the rhythm of sandals on stone. It's a sensory overload, yes, but also a kind of music. One that doesn't care if you're ready for it. Oh, and just a reminder, your day hasn't really started yet. You've only just woken up. You shuffle down a winding alley, still blinking sleep from your eyes, when the gurgling in your stomach reminds you of another urgent matter. Food can wait. Nature calls, and you quickly realize the Roman Empire has very few quiet places to answer it. Let's talk about toilets. There's no such thing as a private bathroom. That's not a thing in your world. If you're rich, really rich, you might have a small latrine in your villa. But you don't live in a villa. You live in a 3rd-floor tinderbox with no plumbing and a suspiciously stained chamber pot that someone forgot to empty last night. So now, like everyone else in your neighborhood, you're headed to the public latrines. It's a short walk. You know the route. Turn left at the fountain with the chipped nymph statue, avoid the spot where the roof tiles collapsed, and hold your breath as you pass the tannery. The stink of curing leather sticks to your nostrils like olive oil on a tunic. You reach the latrine building. It's open to the air, with no doors, no partitions, and about 20 stone seats arranged side by side in a neat row. Each seat is a carved slab with a keyhole-shaped hole in the center. Beneath it, a continuous flow of water to carry away what gets dropped through. No dividers, no privacy. Everyone sits shoulder to shoulder, chatting casually, doing their business while making small talk. It's a social thing. You know that guy 3 holes down? That's Lucius the Butcher. He's giving investment tips while straining. Another man is humming a tune about Neptune's beard. This is just how it is. And here's the worst part, the sponge stick. You scan the little channel that runs in front of the seats, filled with gently flowing water. Sticking up out of it are several sponges on wooden sticks, the Roman version of toilet paper. Communal, reused, rinsed occasionally. You suppress a gag. You reach for the cleanest looking one and hope it hasn't been, well, you stop thinking. You do what must be done. There are rumors, of course, whispers about parasitic worms, about sponges not being properly cleaned, about rats crawling up the channels. One story says a man lost a toe down there. Historians still argue whether these tales are exaggeration or not, but in your current position, it doesn't matter. You're clenching your tunic in one hand and your dignity in the other. As you finish, you glance at the graffiti scrawled above the latrine wall. Someone's etched a message. He who reads this is already too late. Charming. You step outside, rubbing your hands with sand from the bucket outside. No soap, no sink. Just sand. Maybe a splash of water if the aqueducts are working today. This is your daily routine. You're not alone. Everyone deals with it. Even senators use public toilets when they're out and about, though probably nicer ones with servants to wipe things down first. Maybe they even get fresh sponges. Lucky them. You make your way back through the streets, but it's already getting busier. The sun rises higher, casting harsh light through the dusty air. You squint and press onward, weaving between delivery boys, goats, and women shouting out the price of vegetables. And then you see the cistern, a raised public fountain fed by the aqueducts. It's where people come to collect water, wash clothes, gossip, and occasionally bathe. You need water for later, so you wait in line. A woman in front of you is dunking her child into the basin like a loaf into soup. The boy screams. She shrugs. Welcome to parenting, Roman edition. When your turn comes, you fill a clay jug and splash a little on your arms and face. The water is cool, but there's always a question in the back of your mind. Is this clean? Rome's aqueduct system is a marvel, no doubt. Some historians call it the greatest engineering feat of the ancient world. It delivers water from miles away, using gravity and stone channels. And yet, sometimes the pipes are lined with lead. Sometimes the water gets diverted by corrupt officials. Sometimes animals fall in. You take your chances. Back on the street, a passing cart splashes something onto your foot. You pray it was just water. You look down. It was not. You sigh. One of your sandals is now soiled, the leather strap snapping loose as you try to shake off the mess. You consider walking barefoot for the rest of the day, but the thought of every possible sharp object on the street says otherwise. As you limp along, you remember that time a philosopher claimed public toilets were proof of Roman civility. You laugh to yourself. Civilized? Maybe. Hygienic? Not even a little. You hear a familiar sound, clanking armor and rhythmic footsteps. A small group of legionaries marches past, heading toward the city gates. Tourists, wealthy ones, part like the sea to avoid them. Everyone knows not to get in their way. You try not to make eye contact. Roman soldiers don't need a reason to shove someone aside. One of them spits, another adjusts his gladius, the short stabbing sword every Roman foot soldier carries. The sound of metal and leather is strangely comforting. These men are everywhere, part of the daily cityscape. In peacetime, they help build roads, patrol streets, and occasionally get into brawls at taverns. In wartime, they die for the empire. You're still thinking about them as you approach a small open square where a philosopher stands on a box lecturing about the nature of morality. A few listeners nod thoughtfully. One tosses a cabbage at him. The philosopher ducks and keeps talking. You admire the dedication. Philosophy is trendy these days. Everyone wants to quote Socrates, even if no one really understands him. As the sun climbs higher, the heat starts to build. Rome's summer days are merciless. The stone streets bake like pottery, and the smell of everything intensifies. You pass by a row of open-fronted shops where butchers hang meat under swarms of flies. Bread vendors wave fans to keep pigeons off their loaves. A man sells perfume made from crushed rose petals and goat fat. You're sweating now. Everyone is. There's no deodorant, no showers, just occasional rinses and heavy use of incense. If you're wealthy, you carry a scented handkerchief. If you're not, you try not to notice. You stop to rest under a small archway, sharing the shade with a beggar missing part of his nose. He smiles at you, toothless but friendly. You toss him a coin, the smallest one you've got, and he nods in thanks. Even the poorest Romans know generosity is a virtue. It might not help much, but it makes you feel a little more human, and that matters in a city like this. You glance back at the latrines as they disappear behind a corner. You survived the experience, yes, but you're still reeling. The smell lingers in your nostrils. The memory of the sponge stick is burned into your mind. And you know, you'll have to do it all again tomorrow. There are moments when ancient Rome almost seems livable. The marvel of the aqueducts, the ingenuity of its roads, the vast markets and chattering crowds. But then you remember, you're sharing sponge sticks with strangers in a public toilet that might collapse at any moment. And you wonder, how did anyone survive this? Spoiler alert, most didn't for long. You made it back to your building, dodged a donkey cart on the way, and managed not to trip on the uneven paving stones that seemed to leap out at unsuspecting toes. You climbed the steps, slowly, so slowly, avoiding that same sticky spot from earlier, now beginning to attract flies, and finally reach your room again. It's time for breakfast. If you were dreaming of something hot, savory, or involving syrup, you may want to reset those expectations. Roman breakfasts, intaculum if you want to sound fancy, are humble affairs, especially if you're a poor pleb. Your morning meal is the culinary equivalent of a shrug. You reach for the small linen-wrapped bundle you tucked away yesterday. A wedge of coarse bread baked 3 days ago and a handful of olives. That's it. That's breakfast. The bread is dense, heavy. You knock it on the table and it thuds like wood. Roman millstones don't just grind grain, they grind everything, including pebbles. That's not a metaphor. Real grit ends up in the flour. You bite into the loaf and feel a crunch. You hope that was a seed. It was not. Your teeth aren't happy. Neither is your jaw. This bread isn't made to delight. It's made to fill your stomach and remind you that the empire runs on carbs and compromise. The olives are better, but bitter, salty. You chew slowly, staring out the window at the smoke curling over the next building. Someone's cooking already, even though they're not supposed to. Fire bans are about as effective as whispering at a chariot race. If you're slightly better off or lucky, you might have a smear of cheese, maybe some figs if they're in season, but mostly it's bread, olives, and the occasional spoonful of cold porridge. No coffee, no tea, just tepid water or a splash of vinegar wine. Pasca, the ancient energy drink for soldiers and poor folks alike. It tastes like bad salad dressing, but hey, it hydrates. You glance around your room and for a moment imagine being rich. Rich enough to have a cook, a kitchen, maybe some fresh fruit brought in on a silver platter. Historians still debate how varied Roman diets really were between classes. The elite wrote about feasts and sauces. The poor didn't write much at all. You sit with your back against the wall, chewing slowly, when the woman from next door knocks on your doorframe. She's holding a fig leaf and a baby. The baby is screaming. She asks if you've seen her other child. Again, you haven't. She mutters a curse in Latin, shifts the baby to her other arm, and walks off barefoot. This is normal. You finish your bread. You pick the grit from between your teeth. You wonder what lunch will be like. Spoiler, not much better. Now it's time to get moving. Work waits. And work waits for no one in the Roman Empire. But before you go, you remember the family altar tucked into a little niche above the doorway. Even the poorest households often have one. Lararium, it's called. A tiny shrine to the household gods, the lares and penates. You whisper a short prayer, light a bit of incense, it's all you can afford, and hope the gods are listening today. You're not religious exactly, but in Rome, superstition and ritual are the glue of everyday life. You don't walk under certain arches, you don't sweep at night, you definitely don't forget to offer something to the spirits of the dead, because if you do, the consequences are unclear, and that's worse than any curse. You head out again, back into the streets, the sun now baking the rooftops to a crisp. A passing cart loaded with amphorae nearly clips you at the corner. The driver doesn't slow down. He yells at you for existing in his path. You nod apologetically, because that's safer than arguing. You pass a popina, a street-side tavern. Inside, a few early risers are already sipping watered wine and tearing into bean mash. A man snores on a bench, head tilted back like a statue of Dionysus with a hangover. It smells like vinegar, onions, and last night's regret. You might stop there later. They serve lentils and stewed cabbage. Nothing fancy, but filling. If you're feeling bold, you might try the garum, Rome's favorite condiment. It's fermented fish sauce, made by layering fish innards with salt and letting it stew in the sun for months. Yes, really. And yes, it's in everything. You pass a merchant selling bread from a cart. Loaves are stamped with symbols from the bakery, ownership marks. Some even bear the names of slaves. Baking is a business, and yes, there are bakeries run entirely by enslaved labor. The most famous one? A man named Ulysses, a freedman who made so much money selling bread, he built a monument to himself shaped like a giant loaf. True story. Your own loaf came from someone less successful, probably a side street baker who throws sawdust in the mix when flour runs low. You think about that grit again. As the crowd thickens, you catch snippets of conversation. rumors about a new gladiator in town, murmurs of another tax coming soon. Someone swears they saw the emperor himself disguised in the market yesterday. Probably nonsense, but in Rome, even nonsense spreads fast. Someone tries to sell you a boiled egg. Someone else offers you dice made from bone. A third person tries to hand you a pamphlet denouncing the latest imperial scandal, written in shaky ink. You take none of them. You keep walking. You reach a small open courtyard where children are playing knucklebones, Rome's version of jacks. One boy's cheating. The others shout. A dog trots through, steals a scrap of bread, and runs off, tail high with pride. And then you hear it. Bellum clangoré, the slow beat of hammers, a blacksmith at work. You pause. Watch the sparks fly as he shapes iron into nails. His arms are corded with muscle. His face is smeared with soot. He barely looks up. He's been working since before dawn. Hard work, no glory, the Roman ideal. You take one last deep breath of the smoky, fishy, dusty air. Your stomach still feels hollow. Your teeth still ache from that bite of bread. But the city calls. The day has begun, and you're still standing. Barely. And as you trudge down the street, someone shouts, "Bread for sale, freshish bread." And you think, maybe, just maybe, tomorrow's breakfast will be better. But probably not. By now, the sun is climbing high, sharpening every shadow across the stone-paved streets. The city is alive and grinding forward, vendors shouting, animals braying, metal clanging, kids crying, and distant voices echoing down marble-lined alleys. Rome is never quiet, never still. And you've got work to do. Whether you're a free pleb, a freedman, or a household slave, there's no real version of time off. Not for you. The idea of weekends hasn't been invented yet, and even festival days usually involve more standing around watching sacrifices than actual rest. It's all survival all the time. You cross a crowded intersection where a donkey appears to be winning a shouting match with its handler. A fishmonger yells something rude in your direction, but you ignore it. Your focus is on getting to your job, which, depending on your status, could range from grindingly dull to life-threateningly awful. Let's say you're one of the luckier ones, a freeman, perhaps working in a tradesman's shop. You arrive at a cramped workspace off a main alley, a stall, really, open to the street, with a makeshift awning to block the sun. Your boss is already there, organizing tools, sleeves rolled up, barking orders. You join him without a word. That's just how it is. If you're a cobbler, you spend your day cutting rough leather, stitching sandals, repairing straps worn from endless street miles. Your hands blister, your spine protests. There's no chair, just a stool and some dust. And you're paid when your boss feels like it, which isn't often. If you're a potter, you churn out crude clay bowls by the dozen. Nothing fancy. The upper class wants delicate terra sigillata with decorative motifs. You make the kind of bowls that survive in ancient landfills and wind up in museum back rooms with labels like utility ware, unknown maker. And if you're a slave, you do all that and more. Cleaning, cooking, scrubbing, lifting, and enduring constant correction. You have no legal standing. You are not a person in the eyes of Roman law, your property. Your owner can beat you, sell you, or send you to the mines, and the law won't blink. And the mines, that's a place no one comes back from. You glance across the alley at another worker hauling amphora filled with wine. His tunic is soaked, his face beet red. He's muttering under his breath, Something about slipping a date pit under his master's mattress to cause bad dreams. That's a real superstition. Romans believed tiny rituals could shift fate. A pit under a pillow, an egg buried under a doorstep, a figurine scratched with your enemy's name. Fringe, yes, but common. A cart full of bricks rumbles past. A man groans as he pushes it, sweat streaking the dust on his skin. He looks at you with hollow eyes. He's working off a debt, or maybe a sentence. Rome loves hard labor, especially when someone else is doing it. There's a saying, panem et circenses, bread and circuses. The idea is, if the state gives the masses food and entertainment, they'll stay docile. But that bread doesn't hand itself out. Someone bakes it. Someone mills the grain. Someone scrubs the flour off the floor while their knees give out. You're someone. By mid-morning, your body already aches. The sun's heat is punishing, and the city radiates warmth like a brick oven. You step into the shade briefly, rubbing your shoulder. There's no such thing as a lunch break. You eat standing up, if at all. And chances are your midday meal will be leftovers from last night, maybe scavenged from a tavern that didn't lock up tight. Still, things could be worse. You could be part of a construction crew working on an aqueduct. It's deadly work. Cutting stone, hauling blocks, dangling from scaffolding tied with rope that hasn't been inspected since it was invented. Roman engineers are brilliant. Safety regulations? Not so much. Historians still argue whether slaves were used to build every major Roman structure or if some public works were done by paid laborers. Either way, there's always someone falling from a height or getting crushed under a column. The city grows on backs and bones. As you bend down to retrieve a dropped tool, a voice barks behind you. Faster! It's your overseer, wiping his brow with a piece of linen that looks as dirty as the floor. He's not your friend. He's here to make sure you don't slow down. You nod and keep moving. You have no real choice. By midday, the sun is a weapon. You can feel it pressing on your scalp, baking the dust into your skin. You pass another worker. His face is sunburned, his hands cracked. He tells you his cousin collapsed yesterday from heat stroke while carrying marble slabs. Did they help him? He shrugs. They replaced him, and that's how Rome operates. Function first, flesh second. Still, there's pride in what you do. Romans love functionality. Roads, bridges, sewers. The infrastructure here is better than in some modern cities. You might be a small part of it, but the thought gives you a sliver of dignity. You watch a group of laborers paving a new road segment, each stone placed with care, leveled, packed, and aligned. A Roman road could last centuries. They've been known to outlive the towns they connected. Some are still walked on today. The man laying the stones beside you grins. When my bones are dust, this road'll still be here. You nod. You want to believe it. But your thoughts are interrupted by shouting. Two men are arguing down the street, one accusing the other of stealing wages. It gets heated fast. No one intervenes. One man draws a small blade. The other grabs a brick. You step back slowly, not wanting to get caught in the splash zone. Eventually, they're pulled apart by a city guard strolling by with a short staff. He doesn't arrest either man, just smacks one across the back and tells him to work it out like men, whatever that means. Conflict resolution, Roman style. You exhale slowly, another near miss. As the sun begins to slide westward, the air grows even thicker. Rome doesn't cool off until deep night. The breeze off the Tiber helps, but only a little. You wipe your forehead and realize you've got clay dust stuck to your eyelashes. Again, you keep going. You always do. And just when you think the day might end, a customer shows up. An upper-class Roman in a pristine toga, pointing at your wares with the bored expression of someone who's never lifted anything heavier than a scroll. He doesn't haggle. He instructs. He doesn't say thank you. He flicks a coin into the dust. You scramble to pick it up. A sestertius, enough for a small bowl of lentils and a crust of fresh bread, or a half glass of passable wine, if it's real. You bite it lightly. Feels authentic. You've been burned before. Rome is flooded with counterfeit coins, shaved silver, fake stamps, debased copper. The city's economy is thriving, but that doesn't mean it's clean. Finally, your boss waves you off. Not kindly, just dismissively. You're free to go. Not free in the existential sense, just no longer obligated to stand here. You shuffle back toward your building, legs heavy, arms sore. The city buzzes around you. Someone plays a flute. A vendor shouts about goat cheese. A dog barks at a painted statue of Mars. And above it all, the sun dips lower, casting a warm amber glow across a city that never really sleeps. You glance up at the skyline, columns, rooftops, and domes silhouetted against the sky. It's beautiful and exhausting. You survived another workday in ancient Rome. Barely. Tomorrow, you do it all again. The workday may be over, but in Rome, that doesn't mean your life suddenly gets easier. If anything, this is when the chaos truly ramps up. The late afternoon sun casts long golden fingers over the cracked stone streets, making everything look warm and inviting, until you take a deep breath and remember that the city smells like horse dung, rotting fish, and desperation. You're back on foot, headed toward your tenement again, weaving through the clogged arteries of Rome's endless streets. Traffic doesn't flow here. It clots. Carts, animals, porters, and people jam together in a symphony of swearing and sheer noise. A donkey ahead of you decides it's had enough for the day and promptly stops. Its driver tries yelling, then whipping, then pleading, nothing. The donkey has entered retirement mode. You detour around it, nearly tripping over a pile of discarded cabbage leaves and what might have once been an eel. And then you step into it, a wet, warm mystery puddle. You freeze, your sandals squelching. Whatever it is, it's not water. You lock eyes with another passerby, and without a word, you both nod in silent agreement. Never talk about the puddle. The streets of Rome are a messy, living entity. The empire boasts nearly 50,000 miles of road, but right now, you'd give anything for a clean sidewalk and working streetlights. Most of the roads inside the city are paved with large, uneven stones. Functional, yes, but also a trip hazard if you're tired or distracted, which you are. The bigger issue, though, is what covers the roads. Horse dung is everywhere. Carts clatter along, horses and donkeys doing their thing in full view, and no one stops to clean up. There's no sanitation department, no organized waste removal system. Sure, a few slave laborers sweep the main roads, but the alleys, the back streets, that's DIY sanitation. And when it rains, oh boy, the filth becomes a churning brown river, sweeping garbage and worse downhill like nature's own flush mechanism. Today's dry, but the heat bakes the muck into a kind of crust that flakes with every footstep. It gets into your sandals, into your clothes, into your lungs, You pass a man squatting beside a storm drain, poking a stick into it and muttering. He's trying to dislodge something. A rat? A coin? Possibly both. You try not to look. Then there's the urine. Yep, public urination is common. Entire alleyways reek of it. And fun fact, Rome collects urine. It's taxed. That's right. The state levies a urine tax because tanners and launderers use it in their work. A good pee could technically be worth money. You're surrounded by golden opportunities in a very unpleasant sense. And speaking of tanners, you don't want to walk past a tannery at this hour. The smell of curing animal skins, blood, and ammonia hits you like a physical wall. You take the long way round. As you approach the forum, the crowd thickens. This is Rome's heart, a hub of temples, markets, government buildings, and marble monuments. It's magnificent, sure. Pillars reaching for the sky, archways etched with Latin triumphs, statues of emperors glaring down at their subjects like disappointed uncles. But it's also packed. You shoulder your way past a man selling boiled chestnuts, a woman with a cage full of doves, and a pair of street musicians loudly debating who gets to sing lead. The smell of roasted meat mingles with the sweat of 50 unwashed bodies. Somewhere, someone is definitely pickpocketing someone else. You keep your hand on your coin pouch. As you pass a corner, a man bumps into you. Hard, you stumble. He offers no apology. Romans don't do "excuse me." They barrel through, and if you don't move, that's on you. He disappears into the crowd, and you instinctively check your pouch. Still there, miracle. You veer into a quieter side street and nearly walk face first into a public urinal, or more accurately, a marble wall with a trough at its base. A few men are lined up, doing their business with zero pretense. One whistles. Another chats about chariot racing. You keep walking, nose crinkled. There's a sudden commotion ahead. A cart has overturned. Fruit rolls into the street. People descend like vultures, scooping up apples and figs before the vendor can scream. A child grabs a handful and vanishes into the crowd. You skirt the edge, nearly tripping over a splattered melon. You pause at a street corner and glance up. There's a laundry shop or Folonica up ahead. You can smell it before you see it. Urine and clay and chalk and sweat. Inside, workers are stomping on clothes in vats, beating fabric with paddles, using every method known to the ancient world to strip away stains and replace them with the smell of feet. If you drop off your tunic there, expect it back stiffer than before and possibly a slightly different color. Still, it's better than nothing. Barely. A man next to you hawks and spits in the street. It lands near your foot. He doesn't even look. You close your eyes and breathe in through your mouth. Mistake. Now you're tasting the city. A group of slaves passes by, carrying massive amphorae on their shoulders. One stumbles. His overseer doesn't help. He raises a stick. You look away, pretending not to see. That's what everyone does. Intervening only gets you beaten, too. But hey, there's a bright spot. A thermopolium on the corner is selling flatbread with honey and herbs. The scent cuts through the filth for a moment, and you consider spending one of your precious coins. You hesitate. You'll need that for dinner. Still, the food carts offer one of the few respites from the stink. Fried dormice, pickled vegetables, grilled fish skewers. Okay, maybe not great food, but it smells better than sewage. As you continue, you pass a woman dumping a bucket of refuse out a window. It splashes near your sandals. You look up just in time to dodge the second bucket. She doesn't look sorry. This is why Romans don't walk close to buildings. Rule of survival. Hug the middle of the street whenever possible, unless, of course, a cart barrels down that middle. Then you're better off pressed against a wall, dodging mystery liquids and shattered roof tiles. It's a delicate dance. And while you're navigating all this, there's always the distant threat of fire. The city is built tight, wooden balconies overhanging the streets, upper stories leaning dangerously. One bad cooking accident, and the flames can leap from building to building like gossip. The Great Fire of 64 CE destroyed 2/3 of the city, and even decades later, the fear still smolders. A fire bucket hangs nearby. It's ceremonial at best. And even if the flames don't get you, there's always the collapse risk. Buildings crumble regularly, shoddy construction, greedy landlords, and too many stories stacked on too little foundation. You pass an insula with visible cracks running like spiderwebs through the walls. A child leans out of a second-story window singing to himself. You hope he's not mid-verse when the floor gives out. By the time you make it back to your neighborhood, you're drenched in sweat, your sandals are soaked with various fluids, and your patience is a threadbare toga fluttering in the wind. A group of children plays by an old fountain splashing water and shouting in Greek. One offers you a wet plum. You decline politely. The plum looks like it's had a rough life. As you enter your tenement, you pass a man carving something into the wall. You pause. It's a crude drawing of a man being stepped on by a horse. He grins. Art, he says. From life. Fair enough. You climb the stairs again. That same suspicious puddle is still on the landing. It's grown. You reach your door and lean against it for a moment, trying not to breathe too deeply. Rome is many things. Powerful, beautiful, historic, but clean? Never. If this is the height of civilization, you wonder what the low point looks like. Still, you made it through another stroll through the eternal city. Well, you limped, but in Rome, that counts as winning. You're hot. You're sweaty. You might be covered in things that defy classification by modern science. So logically, the next stop is the Roman bathhouse, a social and allegedly hygienic refuge that nearly every Roman, from senator to slave, flocks to by late afternoon. You think you're heading toward a spa. You are not. The bathhouse is not about serenity. It's about steam, gossip, grime, and a communal scrubbing process that feels more like being sandpapered in a locker room. But hey, it beats scrubbing yourself with cold water and a broken pot shard back at home. You arrive at the Thermae, a sprawling complex that practically buzzes with activity. Marble pillars line the entrance. Decorative mosaics of gods and dolphins dance beneath your feet. The architecture is impressive. You almost feel luxurious. And then someone walks by completely naked, humming, holding a fish. Welcome to the chaos. You hand your tunic and sandals to an attendant at the apoditerium, the changing room. He eyes your sandals suspiciously. Yeah, the mystery puddle probably left a mark. You leave your possessions in a wall niche and give him the look that says, "Please don't steal my only tunic, thanks." You step barefoot into the frigidarium, the cold room. Cold, as in dip your foot in and lose feeling. But no one's swimming yet. Everyone's still warming up, literally and socially. A group of older men argues loudly about politics. One claims the emperor is descended from Mars himself. Another insists he's more like Bacchus. A third corrects them both. He's definitely from Venus because he loves attention. The room roars with laughter. You smile politely and inch away. Next up, the tepidarium, the warm room. You start sweating the moment you enter. It's not, "Oh, it's warm in here." It's, "I may be inside someone's mouth." The air is thick, not just with heat, but with the scent of oil, mildew, and human ambition. A man slathers himself in olive oil using a curved metal tool called a strigil. No soap here, just oil to loosen the dirt, then scrape it off like you're frosting a cake made of skin cells. He flicks the gunk onto the floor. You try not to look. You're offered oil by a friendly bather. You accept? Why not? It's scented with herbs which almost masks the smell of the man next to you who seems to have never learned the concept of personal space. You rub yourself down and scrape. It's oddly satisfying until you see where all that grime goes. Spoiler, the floor. The same floor everyone's standing on. It's less a bath and more a human stew at this point. Historians still argue whether Roman baths truly improved public health or just helped diseases spread faster. You recall reading somewhere. Yeah. You're leaning toward option 2, but you're committed. You march into the caldarium, the hot room, and instantly regret it. This is sauna meets steam room meets volcanic punishment. The heat slams into you like a wool blanket soaked in boiling soup. You can't see more than a few feet ahead. Steam curls through the air, obscuring half-naked shapes lounging, arguing, massaging each other, or just breathing heavily like overcooked rotisserie chickens. You sit on a stone bench and immediately hop up. It's hot enough to fry a dormouse. A servant pours water over the floor to release more steam. Why? To make sure your lungs feel like they're inhaling a wet towel. You shuffle to a cooler spot and try to blend in like a very confused raisin. Two men begin a heated argument beside you. Something about the proper ratio of fish sauce to lentils. Voices rise, arms wave. A bystander gets splashed with oil and mutters something that sounds vaguely treasonous. Remember, the bathhouse is the newsroom, barbershop, and courtroom all rolled into one. Scandals get born here, alliances too. You're just here for a scrub and maybe to stop smelling like regret. Eventually, someone suggests a game of dice. A few denarii clatter on a bench. People crowd around. One man rolls, loses, curses loudly, and storms off with no towel. No one blinks. You find a little peace in the corner until a large man named Marcus sits next to you, sighs deeply, and starts humming what may be a battle chant. You nod. He nods. Neither of you speaks. This is how friendships are born in the empire. But you're still not clean. To finish the experience, you shuffle back to the frigidarium and brace yourself. You plunge into the cold water, and your entire soul exits your body. Your teeth try to escape through your gums. But afterward, you feel something dangerously close to refreshed. You dry off with a borrowed cloth, actually more like a shared rag, and reclaim your tunic miraculously still in your niche. Your sandals are damp. You pretend they're just wet with clean water. It's a lie that helps. As you step outside into the late afternoon air, you feel lighter, not just cleaner, but rehumanized. Your skin tingles. Your muscles relax. Even the breeze feels gentle instead of hostile. And then a small boy runs by and accidentally kicks dust directly into your eyes. Welcome back to Rome. Still, you've survived the baths. A true Roman rite of passage. And you're better for it. Maybe, unless you picked up a skin infection, or the plague, or lice. Okay, you're probably not better for it, but you smell faintly of lavender and boiled strangers. And that's what counts. You pass a group of women entering the baths for their designated time. Usually late morning or early afternoon when men are less likely to be around. Bathing is gender segregated, at least officially, though private bathhouses often ignore that. One of them gives you a look, half amused, half horrified. You assume it's your hair or your entire presence. You walk home slowly. The sun is low now, turning the stone walls amber. Kids play in the street, chasing hoops and sticks. You hear a vendor calling out the day's last batch of pine nuts. Somewhere in the distance, a lute is being played badly. You survived your first full Roman bathing experience. But let's be honest, you're going to need another bath just to recover from that one. You emerge from the bathhouse smelling like old olives and warm limestone, only slightly less filthy than before. Your muscles ache a bit less. Your skin feels like you've been exfoliated by sandpaper and social anxiety, and you're finally ready for, what's this? An evening of relaxation. Oh, sweet child of modern times, you're in Rome. No one relaxes in Rome. They perform. And tonight's performance? Dinner, with a side of boasting, a dash of drunkenness, and possibly blood, depending on which house you're invited to. You shuffle home, slip on your marginally cleaner tunic, and get an invitation, well, more like an obligation, to attend your patron Cena. That's Roman for dinner party, though it feels more like a job interview where someone might throw up on your sandals. As a lower-class Roman, freedman, pleb, or even unlucky merchant, you rely on the patronage of someone wealthier with power, prestige, and a villa large enough to echo when they shout at their slaves. In return, you provide loyalty, favors, and undignified laughter at their bad jokes. That's the deal. You want food? Better smile. So you make your way up the hill to the domus of Gaius Valerius something or other, who never remembers your name but insists you call him Amicus. His house smells like incense, roasted meat, and desperation. You enter through the atrium, all marble tiles and gaudy statues. A fountain gurgles dramatically next to a bust of a former emperor. No one knows which one. It might be a cousin. The bust has been broken and reattached at least twice. Still, it's staring into your soul. In the triclinium, the formal dining room, reclining couches are arranged around a low table. That's right, reclining. Romans eat lying down. You sprawl awkwardly on one elbow, trying not to look like you're about to fall asleep or throw out your back. Tonight's menu is eclectic. There's moritum, a garlicky cheese paste that doubles as a chemical weapon. There's garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce that coats nearly everything like Roman ketchup, but with the aroma of a harbor in August. A servant brings out stuffed dormice. Yes, dormice. Fat, crispy, roasted whole, sprinkled with poppy seeds and dipped in honey. You try to act casual as the mouse eyeballs you from your plate. Bon appetit? But here's the twist. You can't just eat. You must perform appreciation. Moan with pleasure. Compliment the seasoning. Nod like you understand the subtle flavor of imported saffron. All while chewing with one elbow on the couch and trying not to choke on a fig seed. Your host tells a joke about a Greek philosopher and a goat. It ends with a pun in Latin that everyone laughs at. You laugh too. You have no idea what it meant. Doesn't matter, just keep laughing. This is where status games come alive. The host brags about his new mosaic floor, allegedly crafted by artisans from Alexandria. One guest ups him, claiming to have imported marble for his impluvium, the indoor rainwater pool. The room is thick with one-upmanship, wine breath, and stories that may or may not involve actual crocodiles. One man recounts how he witnessed a senator fall asleep during a gladiator match and still get cheered for waking up on cue. Another insists he saw a Vestal Virgin blink too long during a sacrifice. Scandalous, punishable, probably false, but juicy. The wine flows like, well, watered-down wine. Romans dilute their drink heavily unless they want to be seen as barbarians or poets. You sip carefully. Too much, and you'll embarrass yourself. Too little, and you'll seem ungrateful. It's a fine line. Midway through the meal, the entertainment arrives. You were hoping for a lyre player or maybe a trained parrot that quotes Virgil. Instead, it's two teenagers with painted faces reenacting scenes from Plautus's comedies, shouting insults in verse and pelting each other with stale rolls. Art, apparently. You shift on your couch, trying to find a position that doesn't make your leg fall asleep. A bowl of figs makes the rounds, then oysters, then pickled eels, then a sweet dessert that's basically honey and regret. And just when you think it's over, oh no, the poetry starts. Your host's nephew rises to recite his newest work, titled On the Moon's Jealousy Toward Rome. It's 15 stanzas long, in dactylic hexameter. You wonder if your soul can leave your body through your ears. Everyone claps politely. A man to your left mutters, "Better than last time." You whisper, "There was a last time." Historians still argue whether Roman dinner parties were truly representative of Roman social life or merely an exaggerated ritual for the elite. What they agree on, if you weren't born wealthy, you were there to flatter. Your host claps his hands and declares that he's had a vision. Next week's dinner will include a reenactment of the Trojan War using dogs in costume. Everyone cheers, you cheer. Why are you cheering? At least there are no fights. This time. Earlier this month, a similar dinner ended in an argument over astrology that devolved into thrown olives and a bruised eunuch. You try not to make eye contact with the lute player. He's still limping. Finally, the party starts winding down. Slaves begin clearing dishes. One of them accidentally drops a clay cup and flinches like he expects to be whipped. Your host simply sighs. "That was from Hispania," he says. "So, replaceable." You bow. Thank your patron with the proper mix of humility and flattery and slip out into the cool night air. Your stomach churns. That fish sauce was bold. You burp and briefly taste honeyed mouse. You regret everything. But you've made it. You endured a Roman dinner party without offending your host, spilling wine on your tunic, or reciting bad poetry. That's victory. You walk home through the lamp-lit streets, sidestepping puddles, and hoping that shouting in the distance isn't another brawl. Rome is beautiful at night, if you ignore the danger. The marble glows, the stars glimmer. Somewhere, a drunk senator is serenading a statue. It's oddly peaceful. But remember, tomorrow it starts all over again. And you still haven't paid rent. You wake the next morning with a mild headache, a vague memory of fermented fish sauce, and a growing sense of unease. Not just from indigestion, though that's definitely part of it. No, this unease feels more existential, because in Rome, there's always someone watching, not in a friendly neighborhood kind of way, more like blink wrong and the emperor might hear about it kind of way. You're not paranoid. You're just living under a system where power is centralized under one man, the emperor. And that man has the ego of a god, the patience of a thunderstorm, and the legal immunity of, well, an emperor. See, emperors in Rome don't rule so much as they dominate, charm, manipulate, and intimidate, often all at once. Whether you're living under Augustus, Nero, or the latest upstart with a legion and a grudge, one thing remains true. Your fate is tied to their mood. And today, you've got to be extra careful. Because this morning, there's been a public announcement, a scroll pinned to the forum wall. It reads, "Those who speak against the emperor speak against Rome." It's not even subtle. You remember yesterday when someone at the bathhouse made a joke about the emperor's rounder-than-usual statue. You laughed. A little. It wasn't even that funny. But now, you replay it again, and again. Did anyone see you laugh? In Rome, that matters. Because the lex majestatis, the law of treason, is dangerously vague. It doesn't just mean plotting a murder or stirring up a rebellion. It can mean writing a play with a character who reminds someone of the emperor, or yawning when a statue is unveiled, or saying he's not as bad as Caligula. Because guess what? That still counts. Historians still argue whether emperors actually kept lists of enemies, or whether frightened citizens imagined it. Either way, the result's the same. Whispered conversations, eyes darting around the room, and everyone pretending they love the imperial hairstyle trend this year. You try to keep your head down, but Rome doesn't let you. On the street, a parade is forming. Not a fun parade, a triumph, celebrating a recent victory somewhere in Germania. Or was it Britannia? Doesn't matter. What matters is that it's dedicated to the emperor, his glory, and his unshakable fabulousness. You're expected to cheer, loudly, with feeling. There are soldiers marching, prisoners dragged in chains, elephants that look deeply confused, and a man in a toga with gold embroidery too heavy to walk properly. Atop a chariot, a general waves, while a slave whispers in his ear, "Remember, you are mortal." That's your favorite part, a sliver of humility in a whole pie of pomp. But even here, in the crowd, your voice matters. If you cheer too little, someone might report you. Too much, and someone might think you're mocking. It's an art, really. Performing safe enthusiasm. You catch the eye of a stern man wearing the dark, clean tunic of the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite personal bodyguards. Their job? Protect the emperor and remove those who make him feel unprotected. They are not the type to giggle at fish sauce jokes. You quickly look away, smile, clap, clap again. Later, in the forum, you overhear a conversation between two merchants. One grumbles about new taxes. The other shushes him. "Careful," he says. "My neighbor's son was executed for less." You nod, say nothing, and wonder just how many of your neighbors have informants in the family. Because, oh yes, informants are everywhere. The Latin word is delator, and they're essentially professional tattletales. Some do it for favor, some for coin, some because they believe it's their civic duty. And once your name ends up in one of their reports, Your odds of sleeping peacefully again? Gone. You pass a mural being painted on the side of a bathhouse. It shows the emperor slaying a barbarian, bare-chested, rippling with muscles, beard blowing in the wind like a shampoo ad. You're expected to admire it. You do, out loud, just in case. Art is politics. Statues are politics. Even coinage is propaganda. The emperor's face is on every coin you touch, reminding you daily who holds the purse strings, the power, and possibly your future in his soft, ring-covered hands. And if you think maybe you can just flee, head east, start a quiet olive farm, well, think again, because the empire is vast, but not lawless. There are checkpoints, there are taxes, there are rumors, and most terrifying of all, the emperor has spies. They say even in the farthest provinces, someone is always reporting back. Letters sent in code, conversations recounted. So-and-so said this about the emperor's sandals. He winced during the imperial anthem. She named her dog after Tiberius. You once sneezed during an imperial speech. You're not over it. At lunchtime, you step into a small tavern, a popina, where workers and travelers gather. Someone's playing dice. Someone else is loudly retelling a myth where Jupiter turns into a cow. People are relaxed, but when a drunk says something unflattering about the emperor's policies, the room goes silent, dead silent. Then someone says, too loudly, "Our glorious emperor is wise and just." The drunk nods. "That's what I meant." The conversation resumes, just like that. There's this tension in the air, always like a string pulled taut, never snapping, never loosening. You grow used to it, even think it's normal. But deep down, you know, this isn't peace. It's pressure. The strange thing is, most people do love the emperor, or at least the idea of him. He's the protector, the builder of roads, the sponsor of games. Life is better than during the wars, better than famine. He's no worse than the last guy, and maybe even better than the one before. But still, they watch and whisper and perform loyalty like it's a religion. You see a beggar with a sign that reads, "Blessings to the emperor. Food for a veteran." Smart marketing. You toss him a coin. He nods solemnly. May his sandals never wear thin. Later, as the sun sets, a civic ceremony begins in the nearby temple. Incense fills the air. Priests in white robes chant praises to the emperor, now deified, or nearly there. Children scatter flower petals. You're supposed to kneel. You do. Everyone does. There's a moment, just a flicker, where your knee aches and you wobble. The man next to you frowns. You mutter something about a bad ankle. He nods, smiles thinly. Did he believe you? On the way home, you rehearse your story, just in case someone asks. "It's my ankle, old Legion injury." You've never served, but that's hard to verify, because in Rome, the truth matters less than the perception. By the time you reach your insula, you're exhausted, not from physical labor, but from navigating allegiance, from maintaining the proper face, from surviving a society where satire can be fatal and silence can be suspicious. As you lie on your straw mattress, a rat skitters somewhere in the dark. You wonder if it too fears the emperor. Probably not. Must be nice. You close your eyes. You dream of being invisible, unwatched, unjudged. But in Rome, that's not an option. You wake up hacking, not from smoke, though that's certainly part of it. not from the mold caking the ceiling of your cramped insula, although that's contributing too. No, this cough is deeper, rattling, wet, and oddly metallic. It hurts in your chest and lingers at the back of your tongue like you've swallowed a handful of iron filings. You're sick, and you already know that's going to be a problem. In modern times, you'd probably call a doctor, lie down with some fluids, maybe scroll through memes while antibiotics do the heavy lifting. Here, in the Roman Empire, you're about to enter a swirling fever dream of leeches, mystery herbs, and advice from men who think bad vibes cause disease. Still, you try to tough it out. People get sick all the time. Rome is a petri dish. Dense population, open sewers, rats, unwashed hands feeding street food, and the delightful smell of rotting garum in the sun. What's one more bout of gut-wrenching plague between friends? But by midday, the aches start. Your legs tremble, your forehead's burning. You've developed a light sensitivity and can't even make it down the stairs without gripping the rail. You need help, which means you need a Roman doctor. And oh boy, that's a whole thing. You shuffle to the home of the medicus, the local healer/bloodletter. He's not what you'd call licensed or clean, but he has a respectable beard and owns actual tools made of bronze, so that's something. You sit on a creaky bench while the guy looks at your eyes, pokes your ribs, and listens to your cough like he's solving a riddle with no correct answer. He nods a few times, hums thoughtfully, and says, "Too much black bile." Classic. See, Roman medicine is all about humors. 4 bodily fluids they believe need to be in balance: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Everything from a stubbed toe to explosive diarrhea is explained by their relative proportions. So, your black bile is apparently too aggressive. That means melancholy, sluggishness, and probably impending death. The cure? Bloodletting. You smile politely like someone just offered to fix your Wi-Fi with a hatchet. But it's too late. The medicus already has his knife. It's not sterilized, of course not, and he doesn't even pretend it is. He pricks a vein in your arm and watches as the blood drips into a bowl made of, you're pretty sure, goat horn. There, better already, he says, as you turn a shade paler and try not to pass out. To be fair, Roman medicine isn't all bad. They have some herbal remedies that sort of work: willow bark for pain, garlic for infection, honey as a mild antiseptic. But these are usually thrown together with a sprinkling of superstition, a dash of astrology, and a generous pour of trial and error. Feeling worse than before, you stumble home with a cloth packet of crushed herbs and a clay vial of myrrh oil, which is supposed to balance your humors and open the airways. You're not sure if it's helping or if you're just hallucinating from dehydration. Back at your insula, you lie on your mat, sweating through your tunic. Someone a few floors down is wailing. A child cries in the courtyard. The man next to you insists on burning sulfur sticks because he read somewhere that bad air causes disease. Miasma theory, as it's later called. Historians still argue whether most Romans truly believed in miasma or just used it as a convenient explanation for outbreaks. Either way, it leads to a lot of smoke and coughing. By now, your fever is climbing. You're shivering and burning at the same time. Time folds in on itself. You dream of swimming in fountains, then of vomiting in one, then of being chased by an angry emperor holding a leech, You wake in the middle of the night with a nosebleed and a pillow soaked in sweat. Your neighbor insists you need divine intervention. Enter Asclepius, the god of healing. Asclepius is your best hope, assuming you can get to one of his temples, called Asclepians. These healing centers are kind of like ancient hospitals, except instead of IVs and sterile hallways, there's chanting, sacred snakes, and priests interpreting your dreams. You're too weak to travel to the nearest one, so your neighbor improvises. He leaves an offering at a small shrine, a miniature wax sculpture of your lungs. Apparently, this is common. People in Rome routinely offer body part-shaped trinkets to healing gods, which is kind of sweet, until you realize some are made of actual animal organs. The next morning, you're not better. In fact, you're worse. The medicus returns. He now thinks you may have consumed impure food, maybe spoiled oysters, maybe goat milk left in the sun. So he prescribes a purgative. If you're lucky, it's a mixture of herbs and vinegar. If you're unlucky, it's crocodile dung and honey, a fringe remedy that survived in the records despite, thankfully, not making a comeback. You choke down a thick, sour liquid and promptly spend the next several hours either vomiting or hallucinating bees. You wonder if you're dying. Statistically, maybe. Life expectancy in the Roman Empire is brutal. Infant mortality is sky high. Even if you make it to adulthood, a cough can spiral into pneumonia, an infected cut can turn septic, and nobody knows what a virus is. Clean water is rare. Sanitation is laughable. There are plagues, too, especially in major cities. Some Roman records describe sweeping illnesses wiping out thousands. There's even debate among scholars about whether Antonine Plague, a real event around 165 AD, was smallpox or measles. Either way, it tore through the population like wildfire, and no one really knew why. And while elite Romans sometimes had access to private doctors or Greek-trained physicians, you get whatever the local medicus cooked up between astrology sessions and goat sacrifices. Still, you live, barely. By the third day, your fever breaks. Your cough lingers, but you can breathe without pain. The medicus says you owe him a chicken. You pay him with a sigh and a promise to never, ever eat oysters again. You still feel like garbage, but at least you're conscious. You sit on your doorstep, blinking at the sun, and realize something odd. Despite the bad medicine, you've survived. Maybe it was the honey. Maybe the leeches scared the disease out of you. Or maybe your immune system just gave the plague the middle finger. As you breathe in the dusty Roman air, you think, modern medicine, I will never take you for granted again. Then your neighbor sneezes directly into your face. Well, here we go again. Your nose is already twitching. You've barely stepped outside, and the city is alive with strange smells, weird noises, and people doing things you wouldn't dare question. There's a goat walking in a perfect circle on someone's roof. A woman just poured wine onto the ground and muttered something about Jupiter. Someone behind you is shouting that their dog is cursed. It's another perfectly normal day in Rome. But this isn't just eccentric behavior. No, it's deeply serious. Because if you want to survive the Roman Empire, you better learn one thing fast. Everything means something. That creaking floorboard, bad omen. That bird flying north, prophecy. That dream you had about your teeth falling out, someone's going to die. Probably you. You live in a world ruled by omens, rituals, gods and a truly exhausting number of superstitions. And unlike modern superstition, where someone knocks on wood and moves on, in Rome, these beliefs shape life or death decisions. Careers rise and fall. Wars are declared, marriages arranged, all based on whether a priest saw a raven or spilled his wine that morning. Today, for instance, you were planning to visit the bakery. Simple enough. But then a lizard runs across your path. And not just any lizard, a green one. Your neighbor gasps. "That's a sign from Mercury," he whispers, grabbing your arm with all the seriousness of someone announcing an assassination. "You can't go out now. You blink." "Why?" he shrugs. "You'll offend the spirits. So, you stay inside, because no one wants to offend the spirits. Even your breakfast is a kind of ritual. You say a quick thanks to your household gods, the lares and penates, tiny figurines perched in a niche above your hearth. They're like divine roommates. You feed them crumbs and wine in exchange for household luck. Kind of like tipping the universe's doorman. This morning, you pour a little oil in their bowl, muttering a half-sincere prayer. Because why risk it? You're not religious, you tell yourself, but also, you don't want to die today. And that's pretty much how everyone around you lives. Rome is packed with gods. Every corner has a shrine. Every action has a ritual. Officially, you've got the big ones, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Neptune, and their whole divine squad. But there are hundreds of smaller deities, too. There's a god for hinges, Cardea, for mildew, Robigus, and even for manure, Sterculius. No, you're not making that up. Quirky fact, farmers in some regions actually held small festivals to Sterculius, offering thanks for fertile soil and a healthy dung heap. You're starting to think maybe that's where the idea of holy crap came from. Anyway, none of this is considered weird. This is normal. Going to court? Better check the entrails of a sacrificed chicken. Literally. This is a job called haruspicy. Trained specialists who inspect livers to read the will of the gods. If the liver's lumpy, don't take that trip. If it's smooth and pink, full speed ahead. And then there's augury, watching birds. Professional augurs track flight patterns, numbers, and direction. A bird flying left might mean the gods are angry. A bird pooping on your toga? Honestly, still unclear. Historians still argue whether that one counted as good luck or divine punishment. You also can't escape astrology. Every educated Roman knows their stars, their planetary influences, and what month is best to start a business or, say, invade Gaul. Even emperors obsess over this stuff. Nero, for instance, famously consulted astrologers constantly, unless they predicted something he didn't like, in which case, well, bye-bye astrologer. Now, here's the kicker. All this divine micromanagement doesn't actually mean you're safe, because sometimes the gods are just fickle. 1 minute you're fine, the next a minor deity of mildew decides your garden needs to fail, and suddenly you're out of food. So you try your best. You light your incense. You whisper Latin phrases over your wine. You never, ever step over a threshold with your left foot first. And when you do, you turn in a circle 3 times to cancel it out. But even with your best efforts, superstition can't protect you from the rumors starting to swirl. There's been strange weather, dogs barking at night. A statue fell over in the forum. People are talking, quietly, nervously. "Something's coming," says the fruit seller. "Something big, no one knows what." A plague? A war? An omen for the emperor's downfall? Doesn't matter. People believe it, and belief in Rome is like wildfire. One whisper becomes 10. 10 become panic. Suddenly, everyone's tossing salt into the streets, avoiding specific temples or holding last-minute rituals to appease the gods. You find yourself caught up in it too. That night, you tie a red string around your wrist. Your neighbor swears it protects against the evil eye, a kind of spiritual bad luck zap from envious stares. You don't believe in it, of course, but again, why risk it? Sleep doesn't come easy. Every creak is ominous. Every howl of the wind feels like the gods whispering. A pigeon lands outside your window and stares at you with what you're pretty sure is judgment. The next morning, you visit a local fortune teller, a woman who claims to speak with the dead. She sits in a smoky back room, bones in a bowl, and chants something you don't understand. Then she looks you dead in the eye and says, "You're walking a path watched by dark spirits. Protect your liver." That's deeply unhelpful. But you leave her a coin anyway, because she might be right. You spend the rest of the day holding your side protectively and avoiding alley cats. Back home, you pour another offering for the lares, a little more this time. You even add a slice of cheese. Premium. You whisper a prayer just in case the household spirits are hungry and moody. Because in Rome, you never know which god is watching, or why, or what might happen if you forget to say thank you after sneezing. And honestly, you're starting to think that Green Lizard was right. You hear the shouting before you see the chaos. It starts as a distant cheer, like the sound of a crowd catching fire. Then a crash, then a scream. And suddenly, the ground vibrates beneath your sandals like something alive is coming straight toward you. Today was supposed to be fun. The Circus Maximus is hosting a race. Your neighbor dragged you out of bed at dawn, promising excitement, betting, and maybe a roast sausage on a stick if the vendors were feeling generous. You arrived with a handful of copper coins and low expectations. But now you're wondering if you're going to leave with your bones intact. The chariot races in ancient Rome are less like a sporting event and more like war, high-speed demolition, and civic drama all tangled into one. Picture 4 teams, red, white, blue, and green, each with their rabid, toga-waving fanatics. Picture chariots thundering around a dirt track at neck-breaking speed, pulled by horses frothing with sweat. Add an audience of over 100,000 people who haven't bathed today and maybe haven't eaten in 2. And you, right in the middle of it. You try to squeeze through the sweaty mob toward the bleachers, but there's hardly room to breathe. Someone elbows your ribs and shouts something about Fortuna's favor. Another person dumps a jug of wine down their shirt while howling for Team Green. And then the race begins. The starting gates fling open with a deafening crack, and the chariots bolt forward like slingshot thunder. The crowd erupts. You can barely see through the dust, but you catch flashes, wheels spinning, drivers lashing whips, horses screaming. It's mesmerizing, and it's also an accident waiting to happen. Racers slam into each other with reckless glee, trying to force their rivals into the spina, the narrow stone divider in the center of the track. One false move, and wheels splinter, bodies fly, and horses pile up like a broken furniture sale. There are no helmets, no rules, just adrenaline, risk, and the roar of the masses. One of the chariots swerves hard, trying to overtake. The driver leans dangerously far to the side, barely avoiding a spill. The crowd gasps. You gasp. Someone behind you faints. Another faints with joy. And then it happens. A wheel catches the edge of the spina. The chariot flips. It's Team Blue. Wood shatters. The driver is launched into the air like a sack of olives, smacking the ground with a sound you'll be hearing in your nightmares. The horses keep running, dragging the wreckage behind them in a dusty blur. And just like that, the entire crowd erupts into violence. Because that's the thing about Roman sports. They're not just entertainment. They're politics. They're identity. They're the one thing plebeians and patricians can scream about together without ending up in jail most of the time. So, when a team loses, people lose their minds. Someone throws a wine jug, another person throws a punch, and suddenly you're in the middle of a full-blown riot. This is not unusual. In fact, Roman sports riots were so common they had a name: faction violence. The blue and green teams were the most famous, and their clashes could shut down entire cities. Historians still argue whether these factions were just sports teams or thinly veiled political gangs. Either way, you're now caught in what feels like a rugby match crossed with a bar brawl. Times 10,000. You duck as a plank of wood sails past your ear. You dodge left. Bad move. You run straight into a shirtless guy smeared in red paint who screams in your face about how Jupiter himself hates Team Blue. You try to back away, but now the bleachers are collapsing in places. People fall like dominoes. A vendor's cart catches fire. You swear someone just looted a sausage. In the panic, you spot a temple acolyte climbing a statue and waving his arms wildly, crying, "It's an omen. Mars is angry." No one listens. You sprint faster than you have in your life until you're clear of the stadium. Your legs burn, your tunic is torn, and someone's sandal is stuck to your elbow. You don't know how, and you're not asking. You finally reach a quiet alley and collapse against a wall, panting. So that was the Circus Maximus. Not exactly popcorn and halftime shows. Later that night, the city is still buzzing. Fires smolder. Rumors fly. Some say the emperor will punish the losing team's fans. Others claim the gods were displeased by the statue that fell during the race. A few whisper that the riots were staged, meant to distract from some scandal in the Senate. You're too tired to care. But you can't stop thinking about the blue driver, the one who flew through the air like a rag doll and didn't get up. You ask around. Someone says he died instantly. Someone else swears they saw him walking afterward with a broken leg and a bloody grin. Historians still argue whether many of these drivers were slaves or celebrities. Some were beloved and rich, others utterly expendable. Either way, their lives were shorter than their horses' lifespans. There's something cruelly elegant about it all. Glory and danger, crowds and chaos, the briefest moment of fame before dust and bones. And the worst part, you know you'll probably go back next week. Everyone does. Because for all the danger, the stench, the blood, it's the only time this city feels truly alive. And the sausage on a stick was actually pretty good. You wake up coughing. Again. Your throat feels like it's been sanded with bricks. Your eyes sting from something in the air, and your neighbor's been vomiting all night through the wall. Not quietly either. You've been counting each wretch like it's part of some grim musical. 9, 10, 11. You're beginning to suspect he won't make it to 12. Welcome to healthcare in the Roman Empire. It's less about getting better and more about trying not to die creatively. And if you're sick, you're basically a walking coin purse for every street-side quack, potion seller, and temple attendant within 3 blocks. Let's start with your symptoms. You're pale, clammy, and your stomach's acting like it wants to audition for a gladiator role, aggressively and with no rehearsal. So naturally, someone suggests you visit the nearest thermae or public baths. Because, yes, in Rome, bathing is seen as a cure for almost everything. So you shuffle to the baths of Caracalla, wheezing and dripping sweat. The place is massive, vaulted ceilings, marble floors, fancy mosaics, and more steam than a pottery kiln. It's beautiful, yes, but also crawling with coughing senators, runny-nosed toddlers, and one man who seems to be flossing his armpit with a sponge on a stick. You sink into the hot water, half expecting relief. Instead, you get a face full of whatever 17 other bathers just left behind. And the warm fog that seemed so therapeutic now smells vaguely of soup and mildew. You remind yourself it's for your health. You try not to think about the diseases floating in the water with you, like invisible jellyfish. This, you're told, is wellness. Still feeling terrible? Time to call the medicus. Now, there are physicians in Rome, educated ones even. Some trained in Greece, others taught through apprenticeships. But quality varies wildly. Some are genuine scholars of Hippocrates and Galen. Others are just very confident men with pliers and jars of questionable leeches. Your medicus arrives in a cloak that looks like it's been through 4 pandemics in one bar fight. He eyes you with the bored detachment of someone choosing a melon at the market. Too much bile, he says immediately. Of course it's bile. Everything in Roman medicine revolves around the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The idea is that illness comes from imbalance. You've got too much heat, that's yellow bile. Too much cold and damp, phlegm. Melancholy, black bile. Angry all the time, definitely red-hot blood. And how do you fix an imbalance? Oh, friend, you bleed. The medicus unwraps a bronze blade, carefully dulled by time and probably not cleaned since the last Saturnalia. He tells you to hold still and prepares to open a vein, most likely the wrong one. You flinch, beg, bargain, cry, and settle for a compromise, a gentler therapy. He agrees, offering you a poultice of boiled cabbage and crushed locusts wrapped in goat wool. You press it to your stomach, suppressing a gag. It's warm and sticky and smells like disappointment. He also suggests you chew a paste made from dried mouse brains, which he insists is excellent for digestion. You decline. He shrugs, pockets your coin, and wanders off to bleed your neighbor instead. Some Romans turned to temple healing instead, particularly at the temples of Aesculapius, the god of medicine. There, you can sleep in a sacred room next to dozens of others wheezing and coughing, hoping the god sends you a dream with your cure. Sometimes the priests will interpret it. Sometimes you'll just be handed a jar of honey and told to stop sinning. Historians still argue whether these dream healings were spiritual placebo or legitimate therapeutic rest. But either way, they were often safer than seeing the local blade enthusiast. Oh, and don't forget the healing spells. If you're really desperate, you might pay a street magician to whisper charms over your water or bury a small lid curse tablet under your bed. Ideally, one that steals someone else's good health and gives it to you. It's not nice, no. But when your nose is leaking and your ears are ringing and your feet are swelling like overripe plums, morality kind of takes a back seat. And here's the real kicker. You're lucky to be in a city. Out in the countryside, medicine is even sketchier. You're more likely to be treated by a farmer with a jar of sheep urine and a very strong opinion about moon phases. Fringe fact? Some rural cures involved holding live toads against infected skin. Because obviously, if your arm is turning green, what it needs is more amphibians. But don't get too smug. Even rich people in Rome suffer when they get sick. The Emperor Augustus famously had chronic illness and tried everything. Dieting, cold baths, weird herbs. Caligula, possibly epileptic, was rumored to drink ground-up pearls and vinegar to boost vitality. Didn't help his mental state clearly, and Nero supposedly had a whole private army of doctors, which, if nothing else, is a great way to make sure somebody gets blamed when you sneeze too hard. Eventually, after days of baths, bad herbs, and chicken bone tea, yes, that's a thing, your fever breaks. You're not sure if it was the cabbage, the prayers, or the fact that your neighbor finally stopped vomiting and offered you a spoonful of miracle garlic. You don't ask where he got it. You're just glad to feel your legs again. But as you look around your tenement building and hear the coughing from the floor below, the barking of sick dogs in the alley, the weeping in the room next door, you realize one thing very clearly. In the Roman Empire, you don't recover. You survive. And you do it one breath, one hack, one bizarre potion at a time. You're standing in the kitchen. Well, what counts as a kitchen? It's really just a cramped corner of your insula apartment with a clay brazier smoking beside a cracked wall and a shelf that smells like damp figs. You'd give anything for a countertop or a window that didn't open straight into a fishmonger's rear end. But hey, at least you're not hungry. Oh, wait, you are. Because it's dinner time in the Roman Empire, and unless you're rich, you're about to eat something beige, gritty, and vaguely disappointing. This morning's breakfast? A crust of bread and some watered-down wine. Lunch? Maybe a handful of olives and a piece of cheese if you were lucky. But now the sun's getting low, the air smells like charcoal and roasting garum, and your stomach is starting to growl with the fury of 1,000 legionaries denied their rations. So what's cooking tonight? Let's start with grain. Everything, and we mean everything, starts with grain. The state distributes it to citizens in the city, mainly wheat and barley, and it's what keeps the plebs from full-on rioting. You grind it into flour, or more likely, buy it pre-ground because grinding is awful. Mix it with water and bake it into flat, chewy loaves. The bread is dense, dry, possibly older than you. You gnaw at it anyway, dipping it into a clay bowl of something the neighbors generously call stew. The stew is gray. You're not sure why. It has lentils, maybe some onions, and a vague hint of fish sauce. You do your best not to taste it too deeply. And speaking of fish sauce, meet your new best friend / worst enemy, garum. This is the cornerstone of Roman flavor. Made from fermented fish guts, salt, and thyme, garum is splashed over everything. Meat, veggies, even fruit. It's like the ketchup, soy sauce, and Tabasco of the Roman world rolled into one pungent golden brown mystery liquid. It smells like low tide. It tastes weirdly addictive. But if your stew's a little thin, you need flavor. So in goes the garum. You take another bite. Not bad. You only gag once. Now, let's dream bigger. Say you're wealthy or invited to dine with someone who is. Suddenly, the menu transforms into something wild. Roman elites love showing off with food. At their banquets, you'd find stuffed dormice, rolled in poppy seeds and honey. Flamingo tongues, yes, tongues. Peacock roasted with its feathers reattached for dramatic flair. Jellyfish marinated in vinegar. Sea urchins, ostrich, snails fattened in milk. Food becomes theater. Guests recline on couches in the triclinium while slaves serve dish after dish of sculpted absurdity. One source describes a dinner where live birds flew out of a pie. Another tells of boiled parrotfish painted gold. Historians still argue whether these extreme recipes were actually eaten or just exaggerated in satire. But enough archaeological evidence suggests at least some people genuinely ate that stuff and liked it. Back to your life, though. Tonight's dessert is dried figs soaked in vinegar. Sweet and sour, soft and gritty. You eat them slowly, chewing through the seeds like a monk in meditation. Your drink? Posca. That's water mixed with vinegar and herbs. Kind of a proto-Gatorade for the working class. It hydrates. It disinfects. It tastes like punishment. You sip it with a wince. If you're feeling celebratory, you might splurge on some cheap wine from a nearby taberna. It's thick, sour, and watered down, but it gets the job done, especially after a long day dodging horse carts and failing to not inhale street dust. And about meat, well, forget it. Unless it's your birthday, or you know a butcher, or someone rich is being extra generous, meat is out of your price range. You might get some sausage scraps or a strip of salted pork on holidays, but mostly it's beans, legumes, and more beans, which, let's be honest, does things to the digestive system. The kind of things that make your one-room apartment very unpopular around bedtime. But despite the blandness, the weirdness, and the lack of refrigeration, Roman food is more sophisticated than it looks. Cooks use cumin, coriander, mint, silphium, an extinct plant with legendary seasoning power, and lots of pepper. Trade routes bring in spices from as far away as India and Africa, if you can afford them. Even the poorest kitchens try to stretch flavor from herbs growing in window boxes and rooftops. You once tasted mustard seeds mixed with honey and fish sauce. Surprisingly good. And don't underestimate chickpeas roasted in oil with rosemary. Even without salt, which is taxed, thanks Rome, you find clever ways to keep the tongue amused. Occasionally, food turns festive. During festivals like Saturnalia, the poor feast like kings. You might get roast goose, hot pastries, mulled wine with spices. People share, laugh, break rules. Slaves get to insult their masters, lightly. Candles flicker over overflowing tables. It feels, briefly, like the world is tilted in your favor. Then Saturnalia ends, and you're back to scraping lentil crust off yesterday's pot. Still, you manage. You find joy in bread baked fresh, in borrowed herbs from a neighbor, in the clink of 2 shared cups of wine at the end of a long day. You start to enjoy the ritual of it, soaking beans overnight, boiling cabbage with garlic, slicing a precious pear, and sharing it, bite for bite. Even in a city of stone and steel, there's something deeply human about sitting down to eat. Even if it's just stew and vinegar water and the kid upstairs is still calling it rat soup, you let the brazier burn low, scrape the bowl clean with crust, and sigh. Tomorrow, maybe you'll find a fig that isn't half ants. You wake up to shouting. Not the usual late-night tavern howls or a neighbor's goat getting philosophical again. No, this shouting sounds official, urgent, the kind of yelling that makes you sit bolt upright on your straw mattress with your heart pounding and your mouth full of last night's lentil taste. You scramble to the window, or more accurately, the square hole in your wall covered by a warped wooden shutter, and peer out. Smoke. You see smoke, but not the cozy, someone's making flatbread kind of smoke. This is thick, black, and moving. It's curling over rooftops, slipping through alleys, rising like a dark hand over the city. And it's close, very close. You don't panic yet. Fires are common in Rome, very common. Between the oil lamps, the cooking braziers, the dry wooden beams, and the sheer number of people packed into wooden and brick insulae, it's a miracle the place hasn't burned down entirely. Actually, it has, several times. The Great Fire of 64 CE, that one gutted over half the city. Historians still argue whether Nero really fiddled while it burned or just issued an aggressively late memo. But today, it's your turn to feel the heat. You grab your tunic, backwards, who cares, stuff a piece of stale bread in your mouth, and shove your way into the hallway. The building is chaos. People shouting, kids crying, a parrot screaming in Latin, "Exitum! Exitum!" Smoke slithers through the stairwell like a snake. You pound down 3 flights and burst into the street, coughing and blinking. And the street? Not much better. Fire dances along the thatched roofs to your left. People run with sloshing buckets. A cart is tipped over, its contents, a very unhappy donkey and 6 terrified chickens, scrambling in all directions. Someone is already looting a bakery, because priorities. And in the distance, the red cloaks of Rome's fire brigade, the vigils, are finally appearing. You'd think they'd be a comfort, but let's talk about the vigils. Rome's answer to the constant risk of urban fire was to create a full-time force of firefighters/watchmen. There are thousands of them organized into cohorts, with stations placed strategically throughout the city. They carry buckets, axes, grappling hooks, even vinegar, because it can slow flames. But here's the problem. The vigils don't always come quickly, or competently, or at all. Sometimes they expect bribes to help. Sometimes they help the highest bidder first. And sometimes, like today, they arrive in full theater mode, barking orders, breaking down doors, and sloshing buckets of water mostly on each other. You dodge a sooty guy shouting, "Cave ignem," beware the fire, and sprint toward the Tiber, where the air's cooler. But the fire's spreading faster than you expected. See, Roman buildings, especially in the poorer districts, are fire traps. Wooden staircases, dry walls, rags hanging to dry, tight alleys acting like wind tunnels. Once a fire starts, it doesn't stop. Not until it hits a wide-open plaza or runs out of fuel. You pass a shop going up in flames, once a candle seller, now a pyre. A woman screams for her cat. 2 children lug a table between them like it's treasure. The baker you once bought burned fig tarts from is dragging his dough trough out into the street like it's a family heirloom. And somewhere above you, a roof collapses in a shower of sparks. That gets the vigils moving. They start demolishing buildings. Yes, really, it's one of the few tactics that sometimes works. Tear down the houses in the fire's path and create a fire break. Problem is, they don't always ask permission. And if they decide your home is next, well, good luck arguing. One man is screaming at them to stop. Another joins in. A few slaves start chucking furniture out the windows, before the axes do their job for them. You, meanwhile, keep running. Eventually, the fire fades behind you, and the smoke thins. You collapse against a wall near a fountain and watch the sky, red, gray, and flickering. Later, the aftermath becomes its own disaster. People return to find ashes. The smell lingers for days. Families pack into temples or sleep under colonnades. Thieves pick through debris. There's no formal insurance. You lose your home? Too bad. Unless you're wealthy. The rich have homes made of stone and concrete, fireproof, safe. Their atriums may flood during a storm, but at least they don't ignite when someone drops a lamp. And if their homes do burn, they have influence. They know someone. They have villas in the countryside to flee to. You just have burnt bread and a singed elbow. Eventually, a public announcement is made. There'll be rebuilding, yes, but it will take time. New rules may come down from the Senate, wider streets, height limits, stricter building codes. People will ignore them, of course. They always do. You wander back to your insula, what's left of it. One wall stands. A few neighbors are picking through the debris. You find a pot, still intact, and a pair of sandals that aren't yours but fit better than yours did anyway. You settle on the step, brushing ash from your tunic, staring at the blackened skyline, and you wonder, how many fires has this city survived? More than you can count. But every time, it rises again, not like a phoenix, more like a stubborn mule refusing to lie down. Brick by brick, insula by insula, life goes on. The bread gets baked, the stews bubble. Someone repairs the parrot's perch. You take a deep breath. It smells like smoke, vinegar, and tomorrow. The night after the fire, you sleep outside. Your insula is half rubble, the top floor gone, and your apartment now has the open-air floor plan. That's great for stargazing, but terrible for, well, everything else. You curl up beside a pillar of what used to be your staircase, using your tunic as a blanket and a salvaged basket as a pillow. Sometime before dawn, you're woken by a trumpet. Not the festive kind, not music. This is a sharp, blaring military revel, which can only mean one thing. Soldiers are marching, and that's never casual. Rome, for all its grandeur, is a city on edge. Even at the height of its power, there's a constant low-level hum of tension buzzing beneath the streets. Slave revolts, food riots, senatorial intrigue, and always the looming presence of the army. You peer out into the main street and see them. A small cohort of urban cohorts. Essentially, the city's internal security force, half police, half soldiers. They wear segmented armor, loricas segmentata, short swords at their sides, and the kind of no-nonsense scowls that make you straighten your back automatically. They're not here for a parade. Someone was caught looting, or preaching, or starting a brawl near the forum, or worse, spreading anti-imperial graffiti. You once saw someone arrested for etching "Caesar is a donkey" into a public urinal. Bold choice. You decide it's not your business today. It never is. But since we're up early, let's talk about military life. Because for a lot of young men in the Roman Empire, soldiering is the ultimate career move, if you survive. You're not a soldier. Congratulations on having both knees. But let's imagine for a moment that you were. First step, you'd head to a recruiting station called a stadio. If you're a Roman citizen, you might be assigned to the legions, the elite backbone of the Roman military. non-citizens, and that includes most people from the provinces. Welcome to the auxiliaries. Less pay, more danger. But hey, citizenship after 25 years, assuming you don't get skewered by a Gallic spear first. Training is brutal. Daily drills, forced marches in full gear, up to 20 miles with a pack weighing 90 pounds. Sword practice against wooden posts, shield formations, latrine duty, everyone's favorite. And don't forget building, because legionaries aren't just fighters, they're engineers. Historians still argue whether the training or the endless construction projects were worse. You'd be expected to build your own camp, complete with ditches, ramparts, and wooden stakes every single night. You'd construct roads, aqueducts, forts. You'd dig until your hands bled, then get up and do it again the next day. And the gear? Oh, the gear. You'd wear armor that's more decorative than comfortable, a helmet that smells like the last 3 guys who wore it, and sandals, cala gay, with hobnailed soles designed to give you heroic blisters. You'd carry a gladius, short, sharp, good for stabbing in tight formations, and a scutum, the curved rectangular shield that turns you into a walking wall. Now imagine doing all that in the Middle East, in July. You train, you march, you sweat, and eventually you're sent out. Not just to fight. Sometimes to guard roads, patrol borders, garrison provinces. Sometimes to brutally suppress a local revolt you don't understand in a language you can't speak. Sometimes you're sent to dig a ditch in northern Britain during a hailstorm while being cursed out by a druid. Good times. But in battle, it's terrifying and efficient. The Roman military is a machine. Formation, signals, chain of command, standardized gear, it all makes them unstoppable. You move in coordinated blocks, shields overlapping like a human tank. You don't chase. You don't break ranks. You let the enemy wear themselves out, then close in for the kill. It's not glorious. It's surgical. And if you survive long enough, you get land, money, a pension, maybe a plot in some dusty province to raise goats and tell stories. Of course, that's if. Back in the city, soldiers have a strange reputation. Some love them. Others resent them, especially when they get rowdy. Urban cohorts in the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's private security detail, can act like they own the place. They swagger through the markets, toss their weight around, and occasionally decide who gets to wear the crown. Yes, really, historians still argue whether the Praetorians were protectors or kingmakers, or both, or neither. But one thing is certain. Emperors tread carefully around them. The regular city folk, less power, more fear. You keep your head down, don't talk politics near the barracks, and definitely don't joke about military discipline within earshot of someone with a sword. But there's another kind of military figure you see in the city, the veterans. Old soldiers bent with age, limping on worn knees, missing an eye or an ear or half a story they can't finish telling. Some beg, some run shops, some just sit in the sun near the forum, whittling sticks and watching pigeons with the gaze of someone who once watched a battlefield fill with smoke. They wear their falere, military medals, like armor, and even though they're worn down, people treat them with a wary kind of respect. You nod to one now as you pass him by. He nods back. You never speak, but you don't need to. Later in the day, you hear more trumpet calls, not soldiers this time, a funeral procession, and not just anyone's. A general has died. You watch the parade wind through the city, lictors with fasces, mourners in black, a wax mask of the deceased held aloft like a god's face. There's chanting and flutes, and the sharp snap of banners fluttering in the wind. His sons wear the armor he once wore in battle. His deeds are read aloud, his victories exaggerated, his failures skipped entirely. And then into the campus Martius, to be burned on a grand pyre. The smoke rises like a final salute. You wonder what it was like to spend your life at war, to come home with silver in your hair and calluses you can't explain to anyone who didn't hold a spear. Would you have survived a single campaign? Doubtful. You have enough trouble surviving your neighborhood tavern. Still, it's hard not to admire the discipline, the cohesion, the strange brotherhood forged in blood and sweat, and the sound of boots crunching gravel before sunrise. You sit on a broken column, watching the last of the smoke drift over the rooftops, and you realize in the Roman Empire, everyone marches to something, a battle, a job, a fate. You just hope you're not marching off a cliff tomorrow. Later that night, as the embers from the general's funeral still smolder in the wind, you overhear something unsettling. It starts as a whisper in the tavern, passed from one hunched figure to the next like a cup of bad wine. They're mobilizing the legions again. You pretend not to listen, but you do. Oh, you definitely do. Because when the legions move, people disappear. Sons, brothers, husbands, debtors, gone, swallowed by empire. You finish your drink and slip out quietly, heart thudding. The next morning confirms it. A chalk mark scrawled on the wall near the forum. Citizens of age to present at the campus Martius. That's you, technically. Unfortunately, it's not quite a draft. Not yet, but it's close. And whether you volunteered or were voluntold, the outcome's the same. If your name ends up on a scroll in some recruiter's hand, you're marching, whether you want to or not. So you go. To see, you tell yourself. Just to observe. But there's a tightness in your throat that makes the word taste like copper. At the campus Martius, hundreds of bodies move as one. Bare-chested men practice javelin throws, their muscles knotted and slick. Officers bark commands. A blacksmith shapes iron nails for sandals that will soon stamp foreign soil. A decurion squints at you with too much interest. You shift your weight and move behind someone broader. If you were chosen, your next stop would be the castra, a Roman military camp. Not just tents in a field, mind you, but a carefully engineered stronghold. Every camp follows the same blueprint. 4 gates, a central headquarters, principia, rows of barracks, latrines, stables, a granary, and if you're lucky, a bathhouse the size of a wine barrel. Standardization is the empire's secret weapon. Historians still argue whether it was discipline or infrastructure that truly built Roman power. But most agree it was both, braided together like chain mail. Once inside, your old life ends. You surrender your name, your clothes, even your identity. You become a soldier of Rome. Your kit arrives in pieces. First, the gladius, of course. Short and punchy, more knife than sword, ideal for stabbing between ribs in a crush of men. Then the scutum, so tall and curved, it makes you feel like a turtle pretending to be brave. A pugio, dagger, slides into your belt for when things get really close. You receive a helmet with a brow ridge and cheek guards. Terrible for peripheral vision, excellent for not dying. And sandals, not your old soft worn ones, but hard-soled, hobnailed caligae. By day 3, Your feet will look like boiled figs. You're issued a pack mule's worth of gear, a cloak, mess tin, water skin, rations, entrenching tools, spare tunic, cooking pot, and a sharpened wooden stake. Not for vampires, for fort building, because every night, no matter how tired you are, you build a camp. Dig ditches, raise palisades, sleep behind the protection you create with bleeding hands and calloused fingers. Then comes the marching. Roman military marches are famous for a reason. 20 miles a day minimum. Rain, shine, sleet, heat. It doesn't matter. You move. The legions don't wait for blisters or sprained ankles. If you fall behind, you're left behind. You march in tight formation, gear clinking, dust choking your lungs. The sun becomes a punishing god above you, and the road seems to stretch to infinity. Your feet go numb. Your shoulders ache. Your thoughts blur into one repeated phrase. I should have just stayed home. Sometimes you're lucky and the enemy comes to you. Other times, you march straight into the unknown. The provinces are a mixed bag. Germania is cold, muddy, full of angry tribes and bigger trees than you've ever seen. Britannia is rain-soaked and bleak. The locals smear blue paint on their faces and scream like ghosts. Dacia, sharp mountains, sharper enemies. But your current fate, the Eastern Front, Parthia. You hear it before you see it. Sand, heat, that relentless shimmering light that makes you question what's real. The sun here doesn't just warm, it assaults. You feel your brain sizzle beneath your helmet. Flies circle your eyes, daring you to blink. You sweat so much you stop noticing. You pee maybe once a day. Your tunic, once white, is now the color of disappointment. You're assigned a spot in the tortoise formation, testudo. Shields lock above and around you, and suddenly you're in a human tank. It's brilliant. It's safe. It's also a sauna that moves at walking speed. Arrow volleys thump against your shield. You flinch. Everyone does, but no one breaks formation. That's rule 1. Then comes the horn blast. Charge. You burst forward, and training takes over. You don't think. You just stab, thrust, shield bash, advance. Your world shrinks to the half-second beat of violence and breath. Afterward, silence. Not triumph, just silence. You survived. You're lucky. The man next to you didn't. You don't know his name. Doesn't matter. You take his water skin and move on. There's a saying among the soldiers, you die for Rome or you die near Rome. It's not meant to be funny. Sometimes there's downtime, but that's when the boredom sets in. A soldier's life isn't just blood and bravery, it's waiting for orders, for food, for letters, for your commander to stop chasing wine and actually make a decision. You gamble, tell lies, practice drills, pretend not to notice the rats, and sometimes you get promoted or punished or transferred. You learn to make sandals out of rawhide. You learn which plants help with stomach cramps. You learn that a cold bath in a wooden tub with 20 other men is the best thing you'll feel all week. And you dream of discharge, of returning home, of land and a vineyard and soft bread, and someone who says your name gently. But mostly, you keep marching, because that's what Rome does. It moves across mountains, rivers, deserts. It devours nations with iron and law and the rhythmic stomp of caligae on packed earth. You returned to camp one evening to hear rumors. The enemy might have retreated, or regrouped, or made a pact with someone they shouldn't. It doesn't matter. What matters is this. You march again at sunrise. Your centurion tells you, "Sleep well, men." No one does. Because when you close your eyes, You hear it, always, that steady, relentless beat of Rome echoing in your bones. March, 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 your bones ache, your feet are raw, you dream of dry straw and unbroken silence. But no, your eyes snap open to the sound of shouting. Not battlefield shouting. Worse, this is court shouting. You're in a provincial city now, summoned as a witness to a trial. It wasn't your choice, of course. You just happened to be nearby when someone pointed and said, he saw the fight. And so, congratulations. You're part of the Roman legal system. Well, the bleeding, shrieking, tortured guts of it anyway. Roman justice is nothing, if not theatrical. The forum fills quickly. Onlookers jostle for position like it's the latest gladiator match. After all, sometimes these trials become public executions. Two men stand in the center, the accused and the accuser. You stand off to the side, unsure if you should be looking them in the eye or pretending you're a marble statue. A magistrate, resplendent in his stripe-trimmed toga, sits on an elevated chair, eyeing everyone like he's already made up his mind. You try to breathe normally. You try to remember what you actually saw. But all you can think about is the fact that the man in the purple-bordered toga just asked someone to bring the torture implements. Yes, that's a thing. Because here's the Roman idea of justice. Truth comes out under pain, especially if you're not a citizen. See, there's a different tier of justice depending on your status. If you're a Roman citizen, like some rich patrician's son, you get due process, a formal trial, and maybe a fine. But if you're a slave, foreigner, or just a pleb with no influential friends, they bring out the hooks, literally. It could be the rack, where your limbs are pulled until your joints unhinge, or the equileus, a wooden frame used to stretch the body and snap tendons like old rope. There's also flogging, spikes embedded in whips, because regular ones apparently weren't horrible enough. Historians still argue whether this brutality was more about information or intimidation. Either way, it definitely shuts people up, or gets them to say anything just to make it stop. And let's not forget the public punishments. Theft, branding on the forehead, desertion, crucifixion, treason, stripped naked, beaten with rods, and then, if you're lucky, beheaded. The Roman word for law is lex, but what you're seeing feels a lot more like raw vengeance with a Latin vocabulary. The case before you today? A minor land dispute that somehow turned into a life-or-death battle. One man says the other built a wall across his property. The other man claims it's his land entirely. There are maps, witnesses, you included. But the magistrate seems more interested in the audience's mood than the facts. Your testimony is rushed, barely acknowledged. Then someone shouts an insult. Fists fly. It all goes sideways. You're shoved back, barely missing a sharp jab from a soldier's spear as guards flood the scene to restore order. One man is arrested for contempt. The other for possibly insulting the emperor, a charge so vague it's basically being unlucky. You slink away, heart pounding. Later that evening, you find yourself in another kind of court, a private household tribunal. Because in Rome, even heads of families can act as judges. That's right. Paterfamilias have the legal power to punish their children, their wives, even their slaves, with almost unchecked authority. If the family slave steals something, the master can have them whipped, shackled, or worse. If a daughter disrespects him, a severe enough punishment can be doled out. though killing her might raise eyebrows. Might. You catch a glimpse of a young boy beaten for breaking a ceramic jug. Not by soldiers, not in court. Just at home. Justice, Roman style, isn't always official. It's cultural, baked into daily life. The worst part, people accept it. They even quote Cicero or Livy to explain why it's necessary. You find a bench, press your head against a wall, and try to settle your thoughts. It's then you hear a joke that sticks with you. The only thing fair about Roman justice is the sun. It shines on everyone equally. Except, of course, it doesn't. Let's say you're falsely accused. Let's say you didn't steal that amphora of olive oil, or offend that merchant, or touch that senator's daughter's sandal. Do you get a fair trial? Maybe, if you can afford it. Lawyers, advocati, are supposed to help, but most of them don't care about truth. They care about rhetoric. Who argues better? Who spins the better story? Who has more friends on the bench? Even Cicero, yes, that Cicero, once defended a man by accusing the accuser of trying to poison him with boiled turnips. No, really, turnips. Roman trials are part logic, part theater, and part outright manipulation. They're designed to favor the powerful, the educated, the well-connected, which, of course, isn't you. In fact, by midday, you hear about another case where a man was thrown into the Tiber with a sack over his head, alongside a dog, a monkey, a snake, and a rooster. It's called poena culae, a punishment for parricide. Quirky, right? Except it's real. And it happened. They believed a man who killed his father was so unnatural that he shouldn't be allowed to touch the earth or the sky. So into a sack he went, with animals, alive. Then, splash! Just imagining it makes your stomach churn. You wander back toward your cramped room in the insulae, avoiding eye contact, speaking to no one. Because here's the truth you now know. You don't have to do anything wrong to be punished in Rome. You just have to be in the wrong place, say the wrong thing, have the wrong look on your face when someone important is watching. And if you're really unlucky, someone uses you to make a point. Just ask poor Publius, who got executed because he resembled a wanted man. Or Julia, disowned by her father for gossiping with the wrong senator. Or any number of slaves who bore witness to crimes, then paid for it with their skin. Justice in Rome isn't blind. It's watching. Always. But it tends to look the other way when power is involved. As the day ends and the fires crackle in oil lamps across the neighborhood, you retreat into the smallest space you can find. You curl up like a mouse and you pray, quietly, softly, that no one remembers your name tomorrow. Because in the Roman Empire, that's how you survive. You rise groggily the next morning, aching in places you didn't even know could ache. The smell of burnt olive oil and moldy straw curls into your nostrils before your eyes even open. You don't speak, you barely move, because today you're more than tired. You're cautious. You've learned that in the Roman Empire, danger doesn't always come from the blade, the plague, or the emperor's mood swings. Sometimes it comes from the gods, or more specifically, from which ones you do or don't believe in. Your neighbor across the hall is a fervent follower of Mithras. 2 floors below, a merchant's wife is devoted to Isis, with statues of the Egyptian goddess tucked in every corner of her home. Across town, Someone's built a hidden shrine to a strange carpenter-turned-prophet from Judea, and somehow they all think the other ones are wrong. Religion in Rome isn't just personal, it's political. It's wrapped in identity, loyalty, and law. You don't just believe in gods, you perform your belief publicly. You participate in rituals, feast days, and sacrifices. You march in parades and drop coins in temples. Skipping a festival isn't just antisocial, it's suspicious. There's no such thing as quiet, private worship here. Even your silence can get you killed. The empire, officially, still runs on a pantheon of traditional gods. Jupiter, Mars, Minerva, Venus. You know the names. They're everywhere. Statues on every corner etched into every building. The rituals are old, some borrowed from the Etruscans or Greeks, others homegrown. There are rules for how you burn offerings, how many priests must be present, what direction you face. And here's the real kicker. Religion is state business. If a thunderstorm ruins the timing of a sacrifice, that's a bad omen for everyone. If someone commits sacrilege, the gods might punish the entire city. Crops fail, war breaks out, a building collapses, and someone always blames the guy who skipped temple that week. You might think, no big deal, I'll play along. And sure, you try. You nod politely when incense burns. You throw coins where expected. You smile when asked about your beliefs. But then, you hear about Felicitas and Perpetua, two young women, one a noblewoman, the other a servant. Christians, which already makes them deeply suspect. They refuse to sacrifice to the emperor. They say only one God matters, and it's not Jupiter. So, of course, they're imprisoned, their infant children taken. They're thrown to beasts in the amphitheater like animals, torn apart while the crowd cheers, simply for believing in something unapproved. You clutch your tunic tighter, because belief in this world, it's a weapon. The Christians aren't the only ones drawing fire. The Jews in the empire. They're allowed their beliefs, technically, but they're often eyed warily, especially when rebellion stirs in Judea. Eastern mystery cults like those of Isis or Cybele face periodic suppression. Their rituals, ecstatic, sensual, and wildly different, send conservative senators into fits. Historians still argue whether the early Roman persecutions were systematic policy or chaotic local acts. But from where you're standing, it doesn't really matter. The risk is real. Take one wrong step, and suddenly you're accused of atheism. Yes, atheism. Refusing to believe in the gods of Rome is seen as the ultimate treason. You remember what happened to the philosopher Socrates centuries earlier. Wrong city, sure, but same vibe. Questioning the divine order. Very bad for your lifespan. In a twist of imperial irony, some emperors themselves begin playing God, literally. Emperor Domitian, he wants to be addressed as Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. Try forgetting to say that in court and see how fast you lose your tongue. And Caligula, he starts dressing as various deities and insists his horse be made a priest. Not a metaphor. A real horse. People laugh, quietly, but also tremble. Because who do you think that joke about divine horses gets you compared to? That's right. You. You pass by the Forum, where a new temple is being constructed. This one's dedicated to the deified Augustus, first emperor, now official god. It gleams with marble and gold, funded by taxes you helped pay. Not believing? That's not an option. It's not even rebellion. It's suicide. But here's the paradox. The Romans are simultaneously deeply religious and utterly skeptical. Satirical playwrights mock the gods in secret. Wealthy elites scoff at omens behind closed villa doors. People read horoscopes, cast lots, and visit oracles, then roll their eyes as they do. Your friend from the bathhouse swears by bird divination, where priests interpret the way ravens fly. Another insists the entrails of goats predicted his uncle's gout. And you? You just nod, because what else are you going to do? Because you remember hearing about Pliny the Younger, who wrote to the Emperor Trajan asking what to do with Christians. Should they be punished for the name alone, or only if they break laws? Trajan's reply is basically, don't hunt them down. But if someone accuses them and they don't worship our gods, yeah, execute them. Super comforting. So, you keep your head down. You avoid drawing symbols in the dust. You don't talk about dreams or visions. You certainly don't mention the strange meeting you overheard last night. People whispering in Aramaic, huddled in a wine cellar, passing bread and murmuring prayers. That's how you get branded as a sectarian, or a traitor, or worse, a human torch at one of Nero's parties. Because, yes, that was a thing. After the Great Fire of Rome, Nero needed a scapegoat, so he pinned it on the Christians. Arrested en masse, doused in oil, and burned alive to light up his gardens. A party trick from hell. The empire likes order, uniformity, control. Religion is fine, so long as it fits the mold. And anyone who steps outside it, ashes. That night, as the wind rattles the shutters of your insula, you stare at the ceiling. You wonder if anyone knows what you believe or care. But in this city, it's safer to let belief flicker quietly, like a hidden lamp in the dark. No incense, no statues, no loud prayers, just hope that maybe tomorrow your soul remains untested, that maybe tomorrow the gods, whichever ones are watching, forget your name. You wake up with a cough, just a little one at first, dry, nagging. Maybe it's the smoke from your neighbor's kitchen fire, or that draft coming in from the busted shutter above your mat. You sit up, blink hard, and try not to read too much into it. But down the hall, someone else is coughing too, and they don't stop. You shuffle to the common stairwell, the one slick with yesterday's spilled wine and years of unwashed feet, and you hear it again, this time from the alley. A harsh, rattling sound, wet, gurgling. The street is quieter today, too quiet. The fish vendor with the missing teeth isn't shouting. The bread line is shorter. People are out, yes, but they're not stopping to gossip, not lingering over figs or olives. They keep moving, eyes low, hands closed. Something's wrong. You feel it in your skin before your mind can catch up. Because when the plague hits Rome, it doesn't announce itself with fanfare. There are no trumpets, no dramatic lightning bolts, just a few sniffles, a few headaches, a few people who don't get up the next morning, and then suddenly, everyone is sick. You remember hearing whispers in the forum last week. A caravan from the east arrived late. The driver died 2 days later. Then a soldier. Then the merchant's boy. And now? Now the whole insula smells like sweat and death. Let's be clear. You're not in some future world with doctors in white coats and antiviral meds. You're in a world where diseases are explained by miasmas, evil spirits, or angry gods. Some say bad air causes it. Others blame moral decay or foreign influence. No one knows what a virus is. All you know is that people are dropping like flies. Your friend from the bathhouse? Gone. The fruit seller with the big laugh? Gone. The old man who used to wave from his window every morning? You find him slumped on his sill, his eyes wide open and glassy. Historians still argue whether the Antonine plague of the 2nd century was smallpox or measles. Either way, it swept through the empire like a wildfire. At its peak, it may have killed 1 in every 4 people in some areas. Entire legions collapsed. Cities emptied. Fields went untended. And Rome, the mighty, eternal Rome, reeked of rot. The city tries to carry on. Priests hold processions, dragging statues of the gods through the streets, chanting prayers, burning incense. They think maybe divine favor will fix this. Spoiler, it won't. You consider visiting the doctor, but you remember what that means. A man in a stained toga, no gloves, no mask, just a knife, a sponge, and a set of leeches. He'll suggest bleeding, maybe some crushed herbs, or camel dung. That was a thing. Honestly, you'd rather take your chances. Some people try folk remedies. You see one neighbor hanging garlic over her doorway. Another burns wild rosemary nonstop, claiming it clears the air. A senator down the road paid a fortune for a magic amulet inscribed with nonsense symbols. Guess what? He's dead too. And it's not just the body that suffers. The fear is the real epidemic. No one touches. No one talks. You watch families abandon their sick. You see a mother weeping as she leaves her feverish child behind, knowing she can't afford to lose 2 lives. You learn to step around the bundles in the streets, those awkward blanket-wrapped shapes that no one dares to look at too closely. The carts come in the night now, wooden, creaky, and driven by men who don't stop to explain. They just pile them high and move on, and then the emperor gets sick. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king himself, stoic, wise, unshakable. He writes about death as if it's just part of life, a natural transition, nothing to fear, but even his quill trembles as his friends fall around him. Even his meditations can't stop the plague from touching the palace. You hear rumors that whole sections of the military have collapsed, that Germanic tribes at the borders are moving in, sensing weakness, that the grain supply from Egypt is faltering, that the gods have turned their backs. And maybe they have. You try to sleep, but the coughing won't stop. Yours, your neighbors. The whole insula wheezes like a dying animal. There are no sirens, no ambulances, just a slow, awful symphony of breath and agony. Even the rats seem to move more cautiously now. By the 3rd day, you're sweating through your tunic. Your joints ache. Your mouth tastes like rust. You dream of fires, of black smoke curling through the air, of statues weeping blood. You dream of home, but you're already there. And then comes the fever. You barely register the visitors, just shadows at your door, someone muttering a prayer, a hand leaving a crust of bread by your cot. You think it's your friend, or maybe a priest, or maybe no one at all. Time stretches and warps. You live entire lifetimes in a single shivering hour. And then, miraculously, you wake up. Still weak, still hollow, but breathing. You stumble outside, blinking into the sunlight like it's your first time seeing it. The street is quieter than ever. Fewer faces, less noise, a strange, eerie calm. Rome survives. It always does. But it's never quite the same. A few months later, people start speaking about the plague in the past tense, as if it's gone, as if the empire can just move on, shrug it off, go back to bread and circuses. But you know better. You carry the memory in your bones. And in this city, that's more common than anyone wants to admit. Because this wasn't the first time disease swept through Rome, and it sure won't be the last. The heat is unbearable. Not the kind of slow, sticky warmth you complain about in summer. This is different. This is heat that chokes, that fills your lungs and coats your skin with soot before you even realize what's happening. You were asleep, curled in the corner of your cramped upper-level room, dreaming of bread or bath water, luxuries, honestly, when something sharp and acrid invaded your nose, smoke. And when you sit up, groggy and confused, the world outside your window is glowing orange. There's a fire, a big one. You fumble for your sandals, grab the wooden beam that serves as a door lock, and make your way into the hallway. People are shouting, too many voices to make out. You stumble down the creaking staircase of your insula, that towering Roman apartment block made of timber, plaster, and wishful thinking. Someone yells, "Incendium!" And suddenly, you're wide awake. This is your nightmare, and it's one Rome knows far too well. The city is a tinderbox. Between the tightly packed insulae, open flames for cooking, oil lamps in every room, and summer winds that love to play with sparks, it's a miracle the city doesn't burn down every week. In fact, historians still debate whether the Great Fire of 64 CE was started by accident or, as legend claims, by Nero himself, fiddling on a rooftop. Right now, though, you couldn't care less who started it. All you know is that the fire's moving fast and your options are shrinking. You shove your way through the stairwell as others push past you. Some with kids in their arms, others with nothing but the clothes they slept in. The wood groans. A crack splinters above your head, and then the building starts to collapse. You hit the street just as the top floor comes crashing down in a plume of sparks and debris. Flames lick across the rooftops, hopping from building to building like hungry animals. The air pulses with heat. The screaming intensifies. You run. You run until your sandals fall apart, until your lungs feel shredded, until your legs threaten to give out. But still you run, because Rome is on fire. And when Rome burns, it doesn't do it halfway. Some say it's poetic, that Rome, with all its grandeur and power, must occasionally consume itself in order to rise again, like a phoenix, that its soul is forged in flame. You don't have time for metaphors. You just want to live. You follow the crowd toward the Tiber River, hoping to find open space, air, maybe a bucket line. But the embankments are already filled with people. Some have leapt into the water. Others stand silently, watching the city burn, clutching household gods or jars of coins. The priests are trying to keep order, waving incense burners, calling for calm. But calm is in short supply tonight. Someone breaks into a shrine to steal silver. Someone else is handing out water to strangers. It's hard to know who to trust when everything you know is falling apart. Above you, the flames reflect off the marble domes and statues. Beautiful, in a sick kind of way, like watching a painting melt. You think of the Forum, will it survive? You think of the baths, your favorite sanctuary. You think of the bakery on the corner, The one with the sweet honey rolls, all gone, or soon will be. The fire rages for days. The vigils, Rome's makeshift fire brigade, do what they can, but their equipment is primitive. Buckets, axes, some siphons. They form chains, try to pull down flammable structures to create fire breaks, but Rome is not kind to those who fight her fury. At one point, you see them trying to protect a senator's home with wet blankets. It catches fire anyway. The statue in the garden melts like wax, and yet, somehow, you survive. After 3 days, the flames subside. What's left is a different city, a quieter one, a bruised one. Whole districts are gone. Thousands are homeless. Ash covers everything, and the air, still smoky, still thick with the scent of scorched earth and lost futures. You find shelter where you can, in a bathhouse courtyard among other refugees. People share food, share stories, stare blankly into the distance. Some are already talking about rebuilding, as if that's possible, as if stones and bricks can fix what the fire truly took. Historians still argue how much of Rome Nero rebuilt and whether his grand architectural plans were opportunistic or redemptive. All you know is that construction will take years, maybe decades, and that for now, survival is the only thing that matters. In the weeks that follow, rumors swirl that Nero set the fire to clear land for his golden house, that Christians were blamed unfairly, tortured as scapegoats, that omens were ignored, and the gods are now punishing the city. You're too tired to care. You're more focused on finding food, staying warm, and not coughing when the ash flares up. You help clear rubble one day. Someone finds a blackened statue of Minerva, face half melted. They prop it upright anyway. A symbol of hope, they say. It's a lie, but it helps. And slowly, the city stirs again, like it always does. Vendors set up makeshift stalls on the riverbank. Children play in the ruins, pretending to be senators and gladiators. A drunk poet recites verses about fire and rebirth and the immortality of Rome. You listen, you nod. But inside, something's changed. You've seen the truth beneath the marble, the fragility, the way everything, no matter how grand, can vanish in a blink. The next time someone says Rome is eternal, you'll smile and remember the night it almost wasn't. Now, take a breath. You've been through a lot tonight. From slop-filled streets to burning rooftops, you've survived every impossible corner of the Roman Empire. And somehow, you're still standing, just a little sweatier, a little sootier, and maybe a whole lot wiser. Let's slow things down now. The crowds are gone. The roar of the arena, the clang of sword on shield, the echo of distant riots, they're fading into memory. Even the endless coughing and clatter of hoofbeats on stone roads dissolve into quiet hums beneath your breath. Imagine yourself walking slowly away from the ruins, the firelight dimming behind you, each step softer than the last. The marble roads beneath your feet cool to the touch. The sky, still smoky, begins to clear, revealing distant stars. You find a small courtyard, empty, quiet. A fig tree sways in the breeze, leaves rustling gently. There's a worn bench beneath it. Sit. Close your eyes. Your heart slows. Your thoughts untangle. Tomorrow, the empire will still be there. Loud, chaotic, impossible. But for now, all you need is stillness. You made it through a day in ancient Rome. And maybe that's enough for tonight. Sleep well, dream soft. You earned it.